My name is Hanmu. I spent years in the military, but lately it's been nothing but training and drills. No real combat. No real action. I was bored out of my mind. My old comrade Jean Nan left the army 2 years ago after getting kicked out for killing prisoners. Now he's a mercenary overseas, already making a name for himself. He invited me to join his team, and honestly, it sounded perfect. Gunfire, danger, life on the edge. That's where I belong. So, I filed my retirement papers and waited. Tonight, around 9, I was leaning against a railing in a narrow alley back in Lepien County, talking to Jean Nan on the phone. I told him my application was already submitted, and he should get ready for my arrival. He laughed and said I'd make his team unstoppable. Then my phone buzzed. Another call coming in. I checked the screen. It was Commander Jiang. I told Jean Nan to hold on and switched over. Commander Jiang said he had 2 pieces of good news. First, my retirement was approved. I couldn't help but grin. I'd been worried they wouldn't let me go. Then came the second piece of good news. He said my transfer application was also approved. Transfer application? I never filed one. He told me they filed it for me. They arranged for me to be the captain of the criminal investigation unit right here in my hometown. He said there are plenty of criminals out there to keep me busy. Real action, every day. I have to admit, it caught my interest. Fighting social scum instead of sitting in some boring government office? That didn't sound bad at all. Commander Jiang got serious at the end. He told me to work hard, earn promotions, and not disgrace the uniform I used to wear. Then he said something about how to handle criminals, but a car honked right at that moment, and I only caught part of it, something about being ruthless and treating them like enemy combatants. I stood up straight and saluted. Don't worry, Commander. You know how I handle things. I also asked him one thing that had been bugging me. I'd seen it in TV dramas. A captain is about to crack a case and then gets falsely accused of corruption and suspended. I told him I couldn't handle that kind of injustice. He assured me the organization knows exactly what kind of person I am, and that would never happen. That settled it. After we hung up, I called Jean Nan back and told him plans changed. I'm going to try this captain thing first. If it doesn't work out, I'll quit and come join him. He laughed and said he'd be waiting. I pocketed my phone and walked home through the night. My place is nearby, a 120 square meter apartment. My parents are away on business, so it's just me for now. Tomorrow, I report to the Criminal Investigation Unit. The next morning at 10, I walked into the Criminal Investigation Unit of Lepien County Public Security Bureau. The place was busy. Case files piled high on desks, detectives hunched over computers, and the interrogation room in the corner still had its light on from an all-night session. The air smelled like stale cigarettes and exhaustion. In the command center, the Deputy Captain Li Chun, the anti-gang squad leader Jiang Yan, the major crimes squad leader Zhang Yu, and a few other squad leaders sat around a long table, looking stressed. I learned quickly what had them worried. There's a company called Jiangshan Group in this county, involved in chemical plants, mines, and real estate. They're the biggest taxpayer here, but also the biggest criminal organization. The chairman, Gao Jiangwei, is behind murders, assaults, and forced land grabs. But the guy's careful. The police could never build a solid case against him, always missing key witnesses or evidence. Then yesterday, a man named Li Shanhu showed up. He used to be a project manager under Jiangshan Group. 3 years ago, someone died in a demolition zone he was managing, and then he disappeared. He suddenly reappeared in Lepien County, and the unit grabbed him overnight. But after a full night of interrogation, they got nothing. The guy denied everything. Said he wasn't there during the demolition incident, claimed he disappeared because of a leg injury, and played dumb about everything related to Jiangshan Group. That was the situation when I arrived. Deputy Director Mao Long from the Public Security Bureau walked in ahead of me, wearing a crisp police uniform. The detectives all stood up to greet him. Li Chun asked why he was here. I could see a flash of hope in his eyes. The captain position had been empty for months, and word around the bureau was that he was next in line. Director Mao said a few comforting words about their hard work, then stepped aside and let me walk in. Every pair of eyes in the room landed on me. I'm a young woman, mid-20s, with short hair and no makeup. I was wearing a black t-shirt, dark pants, and black sneakers. Nothing fancy. But years in the military left their mark. My back is always straight. My steps are always even. "This is Han Mu, transferred from the military," Director Mao announced. Li Chun's hopeful expression faded fast. He forced a smile and said the unit wasn't short on people. They already had 180 detectives. If anything, they were overstaffed. Director Mao pulled out a document from his briefcase and handed it to Li Chun. "This is the City Bureau's appointment. Starting today, Han Mu is the captain of Lepiang County's Criminal Investigation Unit." The room went dead silent. Everyone stared at me. I could read their faces like open books. A young woman who looks barely 25, coming in to lead a squad of veterans who are all over 30? They thought it was a joke. Li Chun gripped the document so hard his knuckles turned white. He'd been deputy captain for 3 years, waiting for this promotion. And instead, the higher-ups dropped me in without a word. "Director Mao, there's no mistake?" he asked. Director Mao knew they were all unhappy. To be honest, he probably had his own doubts too. But this came straight from the City Bureau leadership. Nothing anyone could do about it. "City Bureau appointments don't have mistakes," he said flatly. Then he turned to me. "Captain Han, this is Li Chun, the deputy captain." I smiled and extended my hand. "Nice to meet you, Deputy Captain Li." He looked at me. That look had everything in it except friendliness. He didn't shake my hand. He just turned around and walked away. I pulled my hand back, unbothered. I understood his frustration. I basically took his spot. But that's not my problem. The higher-ups made this decision. If he's got a complaint, he can take it up with them. Director Mao looked a little embarrassed on Li Chun's behalf. He coughed and made an excuse for him, said Li Chun was probably just stressed about a tough case. Then he told Jiang Yan to show me around and get me familiar with the unit. Jiang Yan didn't look thrilled about it either, but a look from Director Mao shut him up. He nodded reluctantly. Director Mao patted my shoulder, said he had a meeting to get to, and left. So here I am, new captain, and not a single person in this building is happy about it. The moment Director Mao left, every detective in the office scattered. Not one person came over to talk to me. They were making it clear they stood with Li Chun, and I wasn't welcome. I didn't care. I'm not here for office politics. I'm here to work and serve the people. The only one who stayed was Jiang Yan. He rolled his eyes and said he'd show me around. Then he turned and walked off without waiting. I followed quietly behind him. He took me through every department. By the end of the tour, I had a decent picture of the unit. 181 people total, split into investigation teams, forensic and technical labs, intelligence and support, a fugitive pursuit office, and a case review squad. The investigation side was the main force: city district team, major crimes, anti-gang, anti-fraud, and organized crime. He dropped me off at the archives and handed me a personnel file for the whole unit. When I asked about current cases, he looked at me like I was a joke. He suggested I learn about the unit first before trying to work any cases. Then he led me to my office, an empty room with nothing but basic furniture, and left without looking back. Arrogant prick. I sat down and started going through the personnel files. 181 profiles. When I got to Jiang Yan's page, something caught my eye. 29 years old, third-class inspector rank, deputy section level, currently leading the anti-gang squad. I'd done my homework on police rankings the night before, and reaching that level at 29 was impressive. No wonder he carried himself like that. I found myself a bit curious about him. Not in any romantic way, I just like working with capable people. I finished reading through all the files and closed the folder. That's when I heard urgent footsteps pounding down the hallway. Deputy Captain Li. Hostage situation in the west part of town. An officer came running in, face tight with panic. Suspect has a knife and is holding a woman. He's extremely agitated. SWAT is on the way, but won't be here for at least 20 minutes. Officers on scene are requesting backup. My eyes sharpened. I slapped the files down on the desk, stood up, and walked out. The office was already in chaos. Li Chun was standing at the command center door, directing people. He was telling Zhang Yu to take the major crimes squad ahead and Jiang Yan to follow. I'll lead the team, I said from behind him. It wasn't loud, but every voice in the room died instantly. Lee Chun turned and looked at me. I could see the anger burning behind his eyes. A girl who just showed up, zero detective experience, and she wants to lead a team to a hostage scene? He'd been doing this for over a decade. To him, I probably looked like someone who thought this was target practice at a military range. But rank is rank. He stepped aside, jaw tight, and gestured for me to go ahead. After you, Captain Han. His tone was flat. His eyes said everything his mouth didn't. I didn't bother arguing. I gave the orders. Zhang Yu goes ahead with his team. Jiang Yan rides with me. Zhang Yu glanced at Lee Chun. Lee Chun said nothing. Zhang Yu nodded and moved out. Jiang Yan raised an eyebrow but followed. I could tell he wanted to see what I was made of. We got into a police SUV. I started the engine and floored it. Jiang Yan hadn't even finished buckling his seatbelt when the acceleration yanked him forward. I drove hard, weaving through traffic, cutting between lanes, the speedometer climbing the whole way. I could feel Jiang Yan gripping his seat, his face dark. He probably thought I'd lost my mind. This isn't some empty desert road. There are people everywhere. But we made it to the scene in one piece, and he let out a breath. Jinshui neighborhood entrance. The narrow street was sealed off with police cars. 3 layers of yellow tape held back a crowd of onlookers. A dozen patrol cars were scattered across the road, red and blue lights spinning silently, painting everything in flashing color. I stepped out of the SUV and scanned the scene. A man, maybe 40 years old, stood with his back against a wall, reeking of alcohol. His eyes were bloodshot, veins bulging on his neck. His left arm was locked around a young woman's throat. His right hand held a pair of scissors, the blade pressed against the side of her neck. The girl couldn't have been older than her early 20s. Her face was white as paper, her lips trembling, tears streaking down her cheeks. She was so terrified she'd gone limp in his arms. The situation was getting worse by the second. Every time a uniformed officer took a step forward, the man stabbed the girl's arm with his scissors. She already had several bleeding holes in her arms, blood dripping down and pooling on the ground. Back off. Everyone back the fuck off, he kept screaming, waving the scissors near the girl's neck. The negotiator was crouched 20 meters away, practically shouting himself hoarse through a megaphone, trying to calm the guy down. But the man wasn't listening. He just kept yelling, back off, don't come closer, why does everyone target me? Over and over, completely out of his mind. A young officer tried approaching with a bottle of water. The man made the girl drink from it first, waited to make sure it wasn't drugged, then grabbed it and chugged half. I asked where the sniper was. 10 minutes out. The SWAT team was also 10 minutes away. A few officers tried sneaking up from the side. They barely moved 2 steps before the man spotted them. He yanked the girl backward and drove the scissors into her shoulder. Her scream echoed through the entire street. The rescue was at a dead end. Nobody could get close without the girl getting hurt worse. I'd seen enough. I walked over to a police car, opened the door, and pulled a handgun from the emergency kit inside. I checked the magazine, 6 rounds, fully loaded. I tucked the gun behind my back and covered it with my shirt. Jiang Yan's eyes went wide. Are you crazy? This is SWAT's job. SWAT needs 10 minutes, I said without looking up. How much more blood can that girl lose in 10 minutes? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I tossed him the car keys and started walking toward the man. An officer tried to stop me. Jiang Yan told him I was the new captain of the Criminal Investigation Unit. The officer pulled his hand back and stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Everyone was staring. The crowd didn't know what was happening. All they saw was a young woman in a black t-shirt casually walking toward an armed maniac. The man spotted me immediately. Stop. Don't come any closer. He pressed the scissors against the girl's neck again. I stopped 15 meters away, raised both hands, palms out. No weapons visible. Hey man, I'm just passing through, I said, keeping my voice lazy and casual. Are you guys filming a movie or something? That's a big crowd. He froze for a second, confused. The alcohol had slowed his brain down. He couldn't process what was happening fast enough. That was all I needed. My hand shot to my back, pulled the gun, and fired. One motion, faster than the eye could follow. The shot echoed off the buildings. When everyone snapped back to reality, I was standing there with a pistol raised in one hand, a thin wisp of smoke curling from the barrel. The man had a hole where his left eye used to be. The scissors slipped from his hand, clattered to the ground, and his body crumpled backward. The whole scene went silent, like someone hit pause on the world.
Iba ka moment.
Made sure he wasn't moving. Then I lowered the gun and ejected the magazine. Officers rushed in. Some grabbed the girl, others cordoned off the body. Then the chatter started. One shot, headshot, 15 meters, moving target, free hand. I heard one officer counting it off on his fingers. His face had gone pale. Is she even human? I've been a cop for 20 years. I've never seen anything like that. I noticed Jiang Yen standing by the police tape. His fists had been clenched the whole time, but now they slowly loosened. I could tell he was starting to see me differently. But I also caught the look on his face before he turned away and left. He was thinking what I already knew, that was clean and efficient, but it's not how detectives are supposed to handle things. A pack of reporters rushed at me with cameras and microphones practically hitting my face. They wanted interviews, wanted to know if I was a police officer, wanted comments on what just happened. I didn't stop walking. Sorry, no interviews. As I made my way through the crowd, I could feel it. Every pair of eyes on me had changed. The looks were completely different from when I first arrived. When I first walked into that situation, everyone looked at me like I was a joke. Now, after what I did, those same eyes were full of respect, curiosity, and admiration. Well, most of them. Zhang Yu, the major crimes squad leader, was the first to come up to me. He's a solid-looking guy in his early 30s, square jaw, thick eyebrows, the type who works hard and doesn't talk much. He stood in front of me, clearly trying to find the right words, and finally just said, "Captain Han, that was badass." I glanced at him and said, "As long as the girl's okay." A few young officers crowded around after that, all talking at once. They wanted to know how I trained my shooting, asked if I could teach them, wanted to know why I aimed for the left eye instead of the forehead. One of them actually knew the answer. A shot to the left eye hits the nerve connection and shuts the body down instantly, no reaction time at all. I just smiled. I have to admit, real action feels great. What I didn't notice was a small group standing off to the side, watching with cold eyes. One of them was Zhao Zheng, the investigation squad leader, a guy in his 40s nicknamed Iron Mouth Zhao. He took a drag of his cigarette, watched the crowd fussing over me, and said flatly, "Nice shooting, but detectives don't solve cases with marksmanship." Someone next to him agreed. Exactly. She killed the suspect. Clean and simple. But what about accomplices? What about other cases he might be connected to? All gone now. Reckless. Zhao Zheng concluded. Typical military. That's all they've got. They nodded, crushed their cigarettes, and walked away. Li Chun saw the whole thing too. His expression never changed. I'm sure he admitted to himself that I had skills. But in his mind, that didn't mean I was fit to lead this unit. Detectives aren't special forces. You can't just kill someone and call it done. Investigating, gathering evidence, interrogating, building a case for court, every step requires experience, patience, and brains. Charging and guns blazing won't get you far. An hour later, we wrapped up and headed back. The moment I stepped out of the car at headquarters, a black sedan pulled up in front of me. 3 people got out. The leader was a man in his 40s wearing a dark blue jacket with an inspector's badge on his chest. Behind him was a woman in a white coat carrying a psychological evaluation kit and a young male officer holding a stack of folders. The man introduced himself as Chun Jingming, captain of the Internal Affairs Division. He explained that according to regulations on police use of weapons, since I killed a suspect today, they needed to conduct a legal review and a psychological evaluation. I glanced at his credentials. What a hassle. But I nodded. Fine. They took me to an interview room. I sat back in my chair with my hands folded, perfectly calm. Chun Jingming sat across from me and started asking questions in an easy, conversational tone. When did I get the call? What did I observe at the scene? Did I bring a weapon? Why did I choose to shoot instead of waiting? I laid it all out. The suspect was drunk and escalating. The girl was bleeding from multiple stab wounds, negotiations were going nowhere, and SWAT was still 10 minutes away. Every minute we waited, the girl's risk went up. I told him I'd undergone extensive combat shooting training in the military and had absolute confidence in hitting a moving target at 15 meters. The suspect's head was fully exposed. I took the best window I had and put one round through his left eye. He dropped instantly. The hostage was saved. "Did you consider what might happen if you missed?" he asked. I didn't consider missing. He paused for 2 seconds, wrote a few notes, then closed his folder. He told me his initial assessment was that my actions were lawful. The suspect was using violence to endanger a citizen's life and had ignored warnings. My response was within regulations. There'd be a formal legal review later, but for now, I was in the clear. Then he turned things over to the psychologist, Dr. Su Yi. She sat across from me, holding a pen, studying me quietly for a moment before speaking. Her voice was soft and slow, like she was trying to comfort a frightened child. "Captain Han, let's not rush into the forms. Let's just chat. After firing your weapon today, how are you feeling right now?" "No particular feeling," I told the psychologist. She asked if I meant numb or if it just felt normal to me. "Normal," I said. "I've done similar things in the military. It's not my first time." She wrote something down and asked what went through my head when the suspect hit the ground. "The hostage is safe. Nothing else? No fear afterward? No regret about the suspect dying?" I thought about it for a second, then shook my head. "No." My judgment was that if I didn't shoot, the hostage would most likely die. Between two bad outcomes, you pick the lesser one. That's basic decision-making. Regret? For a piece of trash who is stabbing an innocent girl with scissors? Nothing to regret. She pushed a psychological evaluation form in front of me, 90 questions. Told me to just go with my gut feeling and not overthink it. I picked up the pen and started checking boxes. 3 seconds per question, tops. She watched me the whole time. I could tell she was studying my breathing, my eyes, my hands. I didn't care. There was nothing for her to find. A few minutes later, I handed it back. She scored it quickly and looked up with a small smile. "Captain Han, your mental health is excellent. All indicators are within normal range, better than most frontline officers, actually. I'll sign off on the evaluation and recommend you continue carrying a weapon and working field duty." I nodded. No surprise there. Inspector Chen Zhengming wrapped things up too. He said the legal review would take 7 working days, but based on what he saw, I'd almost certainly be cleared. There was body camera footage, multiple witnesses, and the hostage's life was under immediate threat. Everything I did was within the law. Finally done. I stood up, straightened my shirt, and walked out. What I didn't know yet was that the internet had already exploded. There had been over 100 people watching at the scene. At least 20 or 30 of them recorded everything on their phones. Me walking in, raising my hands, pulling the gun, firing, the suspect dropping. Every frame captured from every angle. The first video hit Douyin before noon. By lunchtime, it had over 5 million views. By 2 in the afternoon, the #1 trending topic was female detective one-shot headshot. Military bloggers with millions of followers posted detailed breakdowns of my movements, analyzing frame by frame. People were asking why I aimed for the left eye, and someone explained it. A bullet through the left eye reaches the visual cortex and motor nerve center, creating a cavity effect inside the skull. That instantly cuts off the brain's control of the body. A shot to the forehead still leaves 3 to 5 seconds of residual muscle response, enough time for a crazed attacker to make one last stab. But through the eye, the whole system shuts down immediately. The comment sections were on fire. People saying they watched the whole video on their knees, asking which unit I belonged to, wanting to send me banners and gifts. Some calling me terrifying. How does a female cop shoot a man's left eye out from 15 meters and not even flinch? Others responding that people like me are exactly why ordinary citizens feel safe. A few voices questioned whether killing the suspect was too extreme. They got shut down fast. People pointed out the hostage had already been stabbed multiple times, and a lawyer chimed in confirming everything I did was legal. The public opinion was overwhelmingly on my side. Meanwhile, across town in the development zone, inside the Jiangshan Group headquarters, a massive building with an executive office on the top floor, 200 square meters of imported marble. Floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the whole city. The chairman, Gao Jiangwei, was sitting on a leather sofa in a custom-tailored dark gray suit, a thick gold chain around his neck. He was in his early 50s but looked younger, hair slicked back perfectly. He held a cup of tea in one hand. On the coffee table in front of him sat a tablet, and on the screen, my video was playing. What I didn't know at the time was that across town, the boss of Jiangshan Group, Gao Jiangwei, was watching my video on repeat in his fancy top-floor office. 200 square meters of imported marble, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the whole city, a calligraphy piece on the wall, the works. His second-in-command, Fang Kuan, a thin guy with gold-rimmed glasses who looked like a scholar but was actually the brain behind all of Jiangshan's dirty business, had already pulled up a file on me. They found out my name, that I was a military transfer, that today was my first day on the job. Fang Kuan's military contacts tried to dig deeper into my background, but my file was encrypted at a level they couldn't access. All they could find was that I served in some special forces unit in the Northwest. Gao Jiangwei wasn't impressed. A woman, how much damage can she really do? He told his people to lay low for a while and not get caught doing anything stupid. 20-plus years in the game. He'd seen it all. One female detective wasn't worth losing sleep over. He sent a forward text to someone, keep a low profile, got an instant reply. Understood. Meanwhile, I walked out of the interview room around 4:30 in the afternoon. The investigation and psych evaluation together took nearly 3 hours, longer than I expected. But the results were good. I was cleared to keep my weapon and stay on field duty.
That mattered to me.
I didn't want to get disarmed on day one. The atmosphere in the office had completely changed from the morning. Instead of hostile stares, I was getting curious glances and quiet respect. People would sneak looks at me and then quickly turn away when I noticed. I went into my office, dropped into the chair, and let out a long breath. What a first day. Then I pulled out my phone and nearly dropped it. Over 100 unread WeChat messages. More than 40 missed calls. 20-something texts. Old army buddies, military school classmates, commanding officers, even relatives I hadn't talked to in years, all asking the same thing. Is that female cop in the video you? I clicked on a link one of my comrades sent me. It was the Douyin video of me shooting at Jinshui neighborhood. 23 million views. Over 100,000 comments. I checked Weibo. #1 trending topic. Shit, I muttered. I'm not someone who likes attention. Back in the military, my photo never appeared in any reports or publicity materials. Not because I wasn't good enough, the opposite. My unit's classification level was so high that even our designation couldn't appear on paper. And now, first day as a cop, my face is all over the country. Then I caught myself. Wait, I'm not in the military anymore. I relaxed a little. That's when someone burst into the office, gasping for air. Li Shanhu is dead. Li Chun shot out of his chair. What did you say? Dead. Jumped from a building. Jinxiu Garden Complex, south side of town. 18th floor. Dead on the spot. Li Chun's face went dark. He grabbed his jacket and started barking orders. Zhang Yu and Zhao Jing with him, everyone else on standby. I'm coming too, I said. I had no idea who Li Shanhu was, but judging by how everyone's faces just dropped, this guy was important. And I wasn't about to miss out on something this big. Li Chun paused and looked at me. He clearly didn't want me tagging along. But I'm the captain. He couldn't tell me no in front of the whole team. Suit yourself, Captain Han. For words, flat tone, then he kept walking. I pocketed my phone and followed. 3 squad cars pulled out of the station with sirens blaring, heading south. I sat in the passenger seat.
Li Shundruba.
Neither of us said a word the entire way. The only sounds were the engine and the sirens outside.
He didn't want to talk to me.
I didn't feel like talking to him either. I leaned back in my seat and waited. 20 minutes later, we arrived at Jinxiu Garden, a mid-range residential complex on the south side of town, about 10 years old. Police cars were already parked outside. Officers had set up yellow tape and were holding back a crowd of onlookers snapping photos and whispering to each other. I ducked under the tape and followed Li Chun inside. The building where it happened was at the back of the complex. 18 stories, Yellowish walls faded by the sun. Down on the ground below, a body lay face down surrounded by a large pool of dark, nearly black dried blood. Li Chun crouched down and lifted the corner of the white sheet covering the body. I stood behind him and looked down. The dead man was around 40, thin build, wearing a gray jacket covered in dust and blood. His arms were twisted at wrong angles. Li Chun's face was dark with anger. The forensic team had already gone over every inch of the rooftop. The evidence showed the man climbed over the railing and jumped. No signs of anyone forcing him. The surveillance cameras confirmed it too. Li Shanhu went up alone, stood on the roof for about 10 minutes, then went over the edge. No struggle, no fight. But nobody believed it was suicide. Li Shanhu hadn't jumped at any random time. He did it less than 3 hours after being released from custody. That was no coincidence. Li Chun ordered the team to trace every minute of Li Shanhu's movements between his release and the jump. Who he met, who called him. Every single detail. As everyone scattered to work, I heard someone mutter under his breath, "Of course they killed him." I turned and looked at the young officer who said it. "What did you say?" He hesitated, then repeated it quietly. I caught that word. Of course. Like he'd been expecting this. I pressed him for more. He glanced at Li Chun, who was busy talking to the medical examiner, then stepped closer and kept his voice low. He told me Li Shanhu had been with Jiangshan Group for over a decade, working directly under Gao Jiangwei. He likely knew about all of the group's crimes, murders, cover-ups, everything. Even if he didn't do it all himself, he was at minimum a witness to it. Yesterday, Li Shanhu suddenly appeared in a back alley on Huaishan Road and got picked up immediately. They interrogated him for a full day and night but got nothing. The man's mouth was sealed shut. Wouldn't crack no matter what they tried. 3 years ago, 4 people died during a demolition project in the north part of the city, and Li Shanhu was running that operation. If he talked, Gao Jiangwei would get life in prison at minimum. But this afternoon at 2 o'clock, the detention time limit expired. Not enough evidence to hold him. They had to let him go. When they released him, Li Chun had said one thing: "If we can't get him to talk now, we'll never get another chance. Once he's out, they'll silence him." And that's exactly what happened. I stared at the body under the white sheet. Then I looked around at the team working the scene, the medical examiner taking photos, technicians collecting evidence, officers interviewing neighbors. Everyone doing their job by the book. I thought about it for a moment. Then I pulled out my phone and called Jiang Yan. "Who is this?" he answered. "It's me, Han Mu. How do you have my number? You gave me the personnel files this morning, remember?" I said matter-of-factly. "Look up everything under Gao Jiangwei's business empire for me." "What do you need that for?" he asked. "Do all you detectives question orders from your superiors?" He went quiet for a few seconds. "Yes, Captain." I could hear the irritation in his voice. I didn't care about his attitude. In the military, an order is an order. Nobody talks back. About a minute later, my phone buzzed. Jiang Yan sent me an internal file with everything on Jiangshan Group and Gao Jiangwei. I scrolled through the information until my eyes stopped on 3 words: Jiangshan Club. A business under Jiangshan Group. Legal representative and actual operator, Song Yu. Her relationship to Gao Jiangwei, mistress. Confirmed with evidence. Mistress. She'd know plenty. I put my phone away, walked over to the young officer, and said, "Let me borrow your baton." Before he could even react, I'd already taken it from his belt and disappeared into the crowd beyond the police tape. 15 minutes later, a taxi dropped me off in front of Jiangshan Club. I looked up at the fancy sign above the entrance. I reached behind my back to make sure my weapon was still there, then walked toward the front door. Inside, a receptionist came over right away with a polite smile.
Welcome, ma'am.
"What service can I help you with?" I reached into my pocket to pull out my police ID, then realized today was my first day. I didn't have an ID. I didn't even have a uniform yet. That was a little embarrassing. I told the receptionist I was Han Mu, captain of Lepian County's Criminal Investigation Unit, and that I needed to speak with their boss Song Yu about a case. The receptionist looked confused and went to make a call. What I didn't know at that moment was what was happening upstairs. Song Yu was sitting in a private luxury room on the 2nd floor, Crystal chandelier, dark leather sofa, red dress, glass of wine in one hand, cigarette in the other. She was a beautiful woman with a near-perfect figure, and right now she was looking down at a young girl kneeling at her feet. The girl was a student who'd been tricked into coming here. She was shaking, begging to leave. Songyu burned her forehead with a cigarette and told her she could go after she entertained 6 clients. The girl was on the verge of breaking when Songyu's man rushed in to report that a short-haired woman claiming to be the criminal investigation captain was downstairs asking to see her. Songyu recognized the description from the viral video.
She
Smiled. She told her people to delete the security camera footage, station thugs in the second-floor hallway, and then invite me up for a warm welcome. She looked down at the terrified girl and laughed. You think your savior just arrived? Sit in the corner and watch. You'll learn who really runs things in Lepying. Downstairs, the receptionist smiled and told me Songyu was waiting for me on the second floor. I took the elevator up. When the doors opened, I paused. The entire hallway was packed with thugs. 12 or 13 men in black suits, dark sunglasses, arms crossed. Is this the welcoming party Songyu arranged for me? I said, stepping out calmly. The lead guy, a man they called Aquin, smirked. Welcoming party? Sure, you can call it that. Get her, boys. The first wave, 4 or 5 of them, charged at once. Some pulled out batons from inside their jackets. Others just cracked their knuckles and came at me with bare fists. I couldn't believe it. Songyu is bold enough to assault a criminal investigation captain? If she treats a police officer like this, I can only imagine what she does to ordinary people. This wasn't some petty criminal operation. This required full force. I reached behind my back, grabbed the baton I'd borrowed from that young officer, and flicked my wrist. It snapped open with a sharp click, 3 sections locking into a straight line, the metal gleaming under the hallway lights. The first thug reached me and swung a fist the size of a sandbag at my face. I didn't flinch. My eyes locked onto his cheekbone. I brought the baton up fast and cracked it right across his face. His cheek caved in. His whole body spun sideways through the air, slammed against the wall, left a streak of blood on it, and he dropped face first to the floor. Didn't move. Every single one of them froze. They stopped mid-charge and just stared at me, a short-haired woman holding a baton, standing over their buddy who was out cold from one hit. What's wrong? Done already, I said quietly. Then I launched forward like an arrow, shoes screeching against the floor, baton trailing behind me. My turn. Aquin's eyes went wide. Before he could even raise his hands to block, my baton smashed across his mouth. Metal hit teeth with a sound that was half crack, half thud. Teeth and blood flew. His brain short-circuited for a second, eyes going dark. Then I brought the baton down on his shoulder. I heard the bone snap, a clean crack. His whole right arm went limp like a wet noodle, dangling uselessly at his side. His one thought before the pain fully hit, this woman is a goddamn monster. Aquin collapsed face first onto the floor and passed out from the pain. I didn't stop for even a second. I swung the baton into the next guy's shoulder. Bone cracked. Half a second later, I flipped my wrist and hit the one beside him. Another crack. Both went down. I charged into the rest of them like a storm. Every swing hit exactly where it needed to, joints, bones, weak points. The hallway filled with screams and the dull thud of metal on flesh. Some rolled on the ground, clutching broken arms. Others curled up against the wall, holding shattered knees. Blood was everywhere. 5 seconds. That's all it took. Over a dozen thugs, all on the floor. Only 2 were left standing. They held their batons pointed at me, but their faces were white, their hands shaking, sweat pouring down their foreheads. They thought they were tough guys before this. Now they looked like scared children. I fixed my hair, then rushed straight at them. They looked at each other in pure terror, then dropped to their knees. Spa, before the word, spare, could leave their mouths, I swept the baton across both their faces in one motion. Teeth and blood sprayed out. They collapsed, curling up on the floor, hands pressed over their mouths, whimpering. What were you about to say? I asked, looking down at them. Next time, talk faster. I looked up and spotted a door at the end of the hallway with a gold sign reading, General Manager's Office. I walked over and kicked it open. The door slammed inward. Song-yu was sitting on the sofa inside, and she nearly jumped out of her skin. She quickly set down a tablet, staring at me with disbelief. She'd been watching the whole thing through a hidden camera outside the room. She hadn't expected me to tear through all her men in a matter of seconds. I stood in the doorway and smiled coldly. "Do you know how many years you get for assaulting a police officer?" She stood up, forcing a smile. "Assault? There must be some misunderstanding. If anything upset you, I'll certainly discipline my staff." While talking, she picked up the tablet and deleted the video. I saw everything she did, but didn't stop her. I walked slowly into the room and stood right in front of her. I stared her down, letting every bit of killing intent I had show in my eyes. She went pale. Cold sweat appeared on her forehead. Her composure cracked.
Good.
Then I noticed a young girl crouched in the corner of the room. I turned my head. "What's going on with her?" Song-yu started to answer, but I cut her off. "Did I say you could talk?" She shut her mouth. I looked at the girl. "I don't know what happened to you, but you can leave now. Go to the County Public Security Bureau, give them my name, and wait for me there. I'll deal with your situation after I'm done here." The girl's eyes lit up with hope, but as she started to move, a thug standing nearby glared at her, and she froze. I clenched my jaw, grabbed my baton, and threw it straight at his head. He grabbed his bleeding skull and dropped to his knees. "Go. Now," I told the girl. She ran out of the room without looking back. Song-yu watched her leave, and I could see the rage boiling inside her. She felt like I'd just ripped apart years of authority she'd built. "Captain Han, this is my territory. Don't push it," she snapped. I reached out and grabbed her face, squeezing her cheeks. "Your territory? This is the People's Republic of China. It belongs to the Chinese people. Who the hell do you think you are?" I shoved her backward. She stumbled and fell onto the sofa. Before she could recover, I was on top of her, face inches from hers, staring straight into her eyes. "You have evidence of Gao Jiangwei's crimes. Hand it over. It'll save you a lot of pain." Her pupils shrank. Now she understood why I was really here. She laughed. "You want evidence on Boss Gao? Go ask him yourself. Why come to me? You think I'm easy to bully, so you're not going to cooperate?" I narrowed my eyes. "I don't know anything and I'm not giving you anything," she said, acting like she didn't care. I grabbed her arm, pressed her hand flat on the glass coffee table, took hold of her little finger, and bent it backward. Crack. Her pinky twisted at an unnatural angle. She let out a scream like a slaughtered pig and thrashed around trying to pull her hand free. But my grip was like a steel clamp. She wasn't going anywhere. "Last chance," I said. Her face was drained of all color, her eyes full of terror, but she still cursed at me through gritted teeth. "Fine." I grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked. She screamed again. It felt like her whole scalp was being ripped off. She clawed at my wrist, her nails digging into my skin, but I didn't move an inch. Song-yu's knees hit the carpet. Her heels fell off. I had her by the hair, and she was screaming for me to let go. I didn't. I yanked her head up and slammed her face into the wooden coffee table. Her nose broke on impact. Blood sprayed across the glass surface. Her lip split open on the edge, blood running down her chin onto the carpet. She screamed and collapsed to the floor, hands covering her face, blood seeping through her fingers onto the white carpet. Her whole body shook. The thug in the corner just stood there frozen. He'd never seen anyone lay a finger on Song-yu before. Now she was getting treated like a punching bag. "Where's the evidence against Gao Jiangwei?" I asked. She wiped the blood from her face with her sleeve and looked up at me, still defiant. "You think beating me up will work?" She spat blood onto the floor. "Let me tell you something. If you don't kill me today, I'll have you skinned alive tomorrow. You're just some squad captain. You're nothing. One phone call from Gao Jiangwei and your own bureau chief comes running to have dinner with him." She grabbed the table and pulled herself up. Her legs were shaking, but she kept her back straight and her chin high. "Evidence? I don't have any. You can beat me to death, and I still won't have any. Keep hitting me if you want. Kill me and you'll pay with your life. Don't kill me, and I'll make yours a living hell. I stood up. She flinched backward, then stopped herself. She pointed at her own face. Go ahead. Hit me right here. Let's see what a people's police officer can really do. Not bad, I said, cracking a small smile. You've got hard bones. Then I grabbed her hair again, dragged her back to the table, lifted her head up, and slammed it down. Her face hit the table. The already broken nose shattered further. This time her brow bones split open, blood covering her left eye instantly. I pulled her up and slammed her down again. Her forehead cracked on the edge. Skin split open. Blood poured down her face. Again. This time her cheekbone. Half her face swelled and deformed on impact. The arrogance drained out of her completely. She stopped screaming threats, stopped glaring. She just lay on the ground trembling violently, blood flowing from 3 different gashes, covering her eyes, mouth, and nose. She couldn't see anything anymore, only feel pain. Stop. Please stop. Her voice wasn't threatening anymore. It was begging. Please. No more. I crouched down and lifted her face by her hair. Where's the evidence against Gao Jiangwei? Her lips trembled badly. She coughed up blood and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. The study. The safe. 3rd shelf. I stared into her eyes without moving. There's a USB drive. And some documents. It's all in there. Password 0417. My birthday. I went to the study. Behind the bookshelf there was a safe. I punched in the code and it popped open. 3rd shelf. There was indeed a USB drive. I grabbed it and flipped through the documents next to it. Some transfer records and contracts. Looked somewhat useful, but nothing major. Small-time evidence. Not enough to bring down Gao Jiangwei. I walked back out and crouched in front of Song Yu. This is all of it, she nodded, blood dripping from her chin. That's everything. I said nothing. Just watched her face closely. Her eyes darted to the upper right for a split second, then snapped back. That was all I needed. People's eyes drift to the upper right when they lie. I tossed the USB and documents onto the table and reached for her hair again. She shrieked. I'm not lying. That's really everything. I ignored her. I pulled her up by the hair and pressed her against the table. With my other hand, I picked up the crystal ashtray and held it in front of her face. I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is the rest of the evidence? She stared at the ashtray, shaking like a leaf, blood still bubbling from her mouth. That's all of it. I'm really not lying. I smashed the ashtray into her face. It hit her mouth. Her lip tore apart. 2 more teeth flew out. Blood sprayed across the table. I really gave you everything. I brought the ashtray down again. This time on her cheekbone. Something cracked. Half her face caved in. She couldn't even scream anymore. Just a weak whimpering sound came from her throat. She lay slumped over the table, blood streaming down her face. I grabbed her hair and lifted what was left of her face toward me. It barely looked human anymore. Nose, brow bone, cheekbone all broken. Lips shredded. Eyes swollen shut. Blood and tears mixed together into a mess. Last time, I said, my voice cold as ice. Where is the evidence? Her mouth moved. She coughed up more blood. She was shaking all over, and this time I could tell she was truly, genuinely terrified. She finally understood that I didn't care about consequences. I didn't care about disciplinary action or who Gao Jiangwei knew. And I wasn't stupid enough to fall for her lies. If she didn't start telling the truth, I was going to kill her. It's in the vanity table. Behind the mirror, Song Yu's voice was barely a whisper. She was lying on the floor, shaking all over. I let go of her hair and walked into the bedroom next to the study. The vanity was against the wall with a big mirror mounted above it. I knocked on the mirror. The sound was wrong. Hollow behind it. I dug my fingers into the edge and pried it open. Behind it was a hidden compartment about 30 centimeters square. Inside, everything was neatly arranged: 3 USB drives, 2 portable hard drives, and several thick account books. I pulled everything out and flipped through the ledgers. Every dirty deal Gao Jiangwei had made over the years was written right there. Bribery, money laundering, hiring hitmen, forcing his way into construction projects, deaths during demolitions. Every entry had dates, amounts, names, even screenshots of bank transfers and transaction records. This was the real evidence. I grabbed a briefcase, stuffed everything inside, and walked out. Song-yu was still lying face down on the floor, not moving. I crouched next to her. "Why do you have all this?" Her voice was raw and broken. "That old bastard. I was with him for 8 years. He's got women everywhere. I knew one day he'd throw me away like garbage." She coughed up more blood. "This stuff was my insurance policy." I stood up, straightened my clothes, grabbed the briefcase, and headed for the door. The hallway was still full of groaning thugs. Not one of them dared stand up. Some clutched broken arms. Some held their knees. Some weren't moving at all. I glanced at them, pulled out my phone, and called 120. Jiangshan Club in the development zone. Multiple serious injuries. Send several ambulances. I hung up, walked to the street, and flagged down a taxi. Back at headquarters, everyone was sitting in the conference room looking defeated. I found out later what they'd been saying while I was gone. Li Chun sat at the head of the table, face dark. Zhang Yu chain-smoked across from him. Jiang Yan stared at the ceiling. All the squad leaders were there, every face heavy with frustration. They'd been talking about how the Li Shanhu lead was completely dead. 3 years of investigating Gao Jiangwei, and every time they got close, something blocked them. Witnesses disappeared, evidence chains broke, key people committed suicide. Zhang Yu had said they couldn't even get a detention warrant with what they had. Someone mentioned Gao Jiangwei was out celebrating at his club tonight, convinced the police couldn't touch him. The room had gone silent. Everyone knew that if nothing changed, Gao Jiangwei would walk free forever. That's when I kicked the conference room door open. Every head snapped toward me. I was covered in blood. My black t-shirt was spattered with dark red, most of it dried to a blackish brown. Blood streaked across my face from cheekbone to chin. The briefcase in my left hand was bulging and stained. I stood there in the doorway, reeking of blood. Nobody moved. Someone's cigarette fell onto the table. A few people instinctively leaned back in their chairs. I didn't say a word. I walked straight to the table and slammed the briefcase down so hard the teacups jumped. "Arrest him." I turned and walked out. The zipper wasn't fully closed. Some of the contents slid out. Thick, worn ledgers with curled edges, USB drives, scattered documents with words like transfer records and bribery details visible on the pages. The room was dead quiet for a few seconds. Zhang Yu was the first to react. He grabbed a ledger and opened the first page. 2 lines in, his face changed completely. He shot to his feet, so fast his chair crashed backward onto the floor. This is Gao Jiangwei's books. This is Gao Jiangwei's account ledger." Jiang Yan snatched a USB drive and jammed it into a laptop. Files popped open, spreadsheets packed with every transaction, every name, every date, every account number. Crystal clear. Zhao Zheng leaned over, stared at the screen, and went white. He picked up another ledger and started flipping through it. His fingers were trembling. 3 years he'd been chasing Gao Jiangwei. He'd never seen anything this complete. "Where did this come from?" His voice cracked. "Where did all of this come from?" Zhang Yu's hands were shaking too. He grabbed another ledger. Murder for hire, assault, rigged contracts, bribery, money laundering. Every crime documented in black and white. From out in the hallway, my voice came thundering through the building. "Are you all blind or deaf?" I said, "Arrest him." "Didn't you hear me?" Zhang Yu jumped up first, grabbed his jacket, and yelled at the room. "You heard Captain Han? Let's go. Arrest him." The conference room erupted. Everyone jumped to their feet at once, chairs flying everywhere. Zhang Yu was the first one out the door, followed by Jiang Yan, Zhao Zheng, and over a dozen detectives from the major crimes, anti-gang, and investigation squads. Li Chun was the last to leave. He stopped next to me for a second. His lips moved like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Then he walked past. While the team mobilized, I learned later what Gao Jiangwei had been doing at that exact moment. He was lounging in his mansion in Emerald Bay, the fanciest neighborhood in Lepian County. Every villa there was surrounded by its own private garden, nestled among trees, tucked against the mountains. Only the rich and powerful lived here. His place was the biggest one, all the way at the back. The lights were on everywhere. He was half lying on a leather sofa in a silk bathrobe, drinking whiskey from a crystal glass. A bottle of Louis XIII, more than half empty, sat on the marble coffee table alongside plates of fancy snacks. Two women kept him company, one feeding him drinks, the other massaging his feet.
He was celebrating.
Because Li Shanhu was dead. Li Shanhu had been with him for decades, since back when Gao Jiangwei was hauling bricks on construction sites. The guy was loyal, kept his mouth shut, and wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. But he was stupid. 3 years ago, when things went wrong at the demolition site, Gao Jiangwei sent him to hide in the mountains with plenty of money and women. But Li Shanhu got restless, came back, and got arrested. So Gao Jiangwei had him killed. A dead man stays quiet forever. He raised his glass to the air like he was toasting a ghost. Shanhu, you were so stupid. He took a long drink. Dead is good. Dead is clean. He was feeling untouchable. 25 years he'd built his empire, from a construction laborer to a billionaire. Every official in Leping County gave him respect. He'd survived every storm. Then his butler rushed in looking nervous. Boss, the police are here. Gao Jiangwei waved the women out of the room and sat up slowly. He straightened his robe without hurrying. What police? Which department? What do they want? His second-in-command, Fong Kun, wiped sweat from his forehead. Criminal Investigation Unit.
Led by
The new captain, Han Mu. His eyebrow twitched slightly. The woman from the internet. The one-shot headshot.
What does she want?
I haven't broken any laws. His tone was careless, almost mocking. A little girl brings a few cops and thinks she can scare me. Fong Kun didn't answer, but I could tell from what I heard later. He had a bad feeling. Another servant came to the door, voice shaking. Sir, they're inside the yard already. I told them you weren't home, but they wouldn't listen. Gao Jiangwei slammed his hand on the coffee table and stood up. Who let them in? This is my private residence. Without a search warrant, they dare break in. He barely finished the sentence before I kicked his front door open. Both doors crashed into the walls with a bang that shook the room. I stood in the doorway. Short hair, black t-shirt still spotted with dried blood from the club. Back straight, eyes locked on the man standing in front of his expensive coffee table. Gao Jiangwei stared at me, his face dark as stone. I stared right back. Behind me stood Jiang Yan, Zhang Yu, and 7 or 8 other detectives. More officers were pouring into the villa, through the hallways. Gao Jiangwei looked angry but forced a cold smile.
Captain Han.
It's quite late to be barging into my private home with this many people. What's so urgent? I didn't answer. I walked into his living room and looked around. Gao Jiangwei, I said coldly. He smiled and crossed his arms, looking me up and down. That's me. What about it? I listed every charge in one breath. Organizing and leading a criminal syndicate, murder, rape, picking fights and causing trouble, forced transactions, bribery. Then I told him he was under criminal detention, effective immediately. The room went quiet. Fong Kun turned pale and stepped back. Gao Jiangwei's smile slowly faded, but he didn't look scared, just annoyed. He looked at me like I was a child who didn't know any better. Little girl, he said, stepping closer, towering over me by almost a full head. His silk robe shimmered under the chandelier light. You're young. Don't be impulsive. The waters run deep in Leping County. Deeper than a new captain like you can handle. Arrest me today, and tomorrow you'll regret it. He reached out and patted my shoulder, not hard, not soft, like some kind of elder giving advice to a junior. Take my advice. Take your people and leave. I'll pretend tonight never happened. If you insist on making a scene, the consequences are yours to bear. I looked down at my shoulder where he'd touched me. Then I looked back up at his eyes. You done? I said, already bored. He blinked. In all his years, no cop had ever talked to him like that. You talk too much, I said. Take him. I turned and walked out. Zhang Yu and another detective grabbed him from both sides. Gao Jiangwei's face twisted with rage. 20-plus years as the king of Leping County, and nobody had ever treated him like this. Let go of me. Do you know who I am? Your own bureau chief wouldn't dare do this to me. Zhang Yu ignored him and pulled out handcuffs.
Click.
Steel locked around Gao Jiangwei's wrists. He looked down at the cuffs, his mouth twitching. But he didn't struggle. He just slowly raised his head and watched me walk away. His eyes were cold, like he was looking at a dead woman walking. Fine, he squeezed out through his teeth. Then he straightened his back and walked out on his own, the handcuffs jingling with each step. No panic on his face at all. In the police car, Zhang Yu sat next to him and snuck a glance. The man had his eyes closed, leaning back in his seat, completely calm, like none of this had anything to do with him. That kind of calm either means innocence or means he thinks he's untouchable. But Zhang Yu remembered the ledgers and USB drives I'd slammed on the table earlier and felt a little more confident. This time, the evidence was solid. Back at headquarters, they put Gao Jiangwei in the interrogation room. Small space, about 15 square meters. A table, 3 chairs, and 8 big red characters on the wall. Confess and receive leniency, resist and face severity. He sat in the iron interrogation chair bolted to the floor, but they didn't even lock his hands down because he was being ridiculously cooperative. He leaned back, crossed his legs, and looked as relaxed as if he were watching TV at home. He even yawned. That's the scene I walked into. This son of a bitch. Arrested, and still acting like he owns the place. I tossed a bulging paper envelope onto the table with a loud slap. Pulled out a chair and sat down. Turned on the desk lamp. The light caught the dried blood still on my face. He glanced at the blood and his mouth twitched into a tiny smirk. I didn't look at him. Honestly, I was afraid that if I stared at that smug face too long, I'd lose control and beat him right there in the interrogation room. I opened the file and started with the basics.
Name.
Gender.
Age. Occupation.
He answered every question perfectly. Even leaned forward into the lamplight so I could see his face better, like he was doing me a favor. Captain Han, you dragged me here in the middle of the night. Surely you have a reason. He tilted his head, amused. I'm a legitimate businessman. I pay my taxes on time. Your own director Mao can vouch for me. I looked up at him.
Frowned.
He didn't like that look, but he kept smiling. Gao Jiangwei, I said, closing the file and setting down the pen. I leaned back, crossed my arms. I don't have time for small talk. I grabbed the paper bag, ripped it open, and dumped everything onto the table. Ledgers, documents, USB drives, portable hard drives. A mountain of evidence spread across the entire surface. Gao Jiangwei's eyes landed on the pile of evidence. His pupils shrank. His breathing stopped for a second. He slowly uncrossed his legs. His fingers gripped the armrests. He tried to stay calm, but his voice gave him away. You think you can scare me with a random pile of papers? I didn't bother arguing with him. I looked over at Li Chun, who was standing nearby. The rest is yours, I said. Then I yawned, shoved my hands in my pockets, and walked out. I know what I'm good at. I'm good at catching people. Interrogations, prosecution, paperwork, that's their job. Let the professionals handle the professional stuff. I walked through the office on my way out. A dozen people were still working under bright lights. When they looked up at me, their eyes were completely different from yesterday morning. No more doubt, just respect. I got home past midnight. The apartment was empty and quiet, just the hum of the fridge and a few goldfish drifting around in their tank under a small nightlight. I tossed my blood-stained t-shirt in the trash, walked into the bathroom, and let the hot water run over me. It washed away the dried blood bit by bit. What a day. Over 20 hours from when I reported for duty to when Gao Jiangwei was in handcuffs. I did in one day what would take most people a week. I dried off, fell face first onto my bed, and was asleep in under 3 minutes. Next morning, 8 o'clock. I walked into the criminal investigation unit feeling good. After yesterday, I had to admit, this job was actually fun. Fighting bad guys and getting real action, way better than endless military drills. But as I walked down the hallway, something felt off. Every officer I passed gave me a strange, complicated look. I stopped a young officer and asked what was going on. He looked at me, opened his mouth, then closed it. There was a flash of something in his eyes, almost like mockery, before he walked away without answering. I tried another person. They didn't even make eye contact. Just sidestepped me and kept walking. Something was wrong. Captain Han. Li Chun's voice came from behind me. He was standing in a doorway, face grim. He jerked his chin, telling me to come inside. I walked in. He closed the door and pulled the blind shut. Gao Jiangwei was released, he said, straight to the point. Released? My brow tightened. This morning. The prosecutor's office refused to approve the arrest. Said there wasn't enough evidence. Not enough evidence. My voice went up. Are you kidding me? After everything I brought back last night, Li Chun motioned for me to keep it down. The evidence you brought back, I checked it myself after the arrest. It was real. But by the time the forensics lab examined it, it had been swapped. What they looked at was fake. I saw it too. It wasn't the same stuff you brought in. I froze. After a few seconds of silence, I spoke, and every word came out cold. You're saying there's a mole inside the department. Li Chun didn't nod or shake his head. He pulled out a cigarette but didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers. Then he seemed to make up his mind about something. Captain Han, I'm a straightforward person, so don't take this the wrong way. His voice was low, but every word was clear. When you first showed up, I didn't accept you. A female military officer who'd never done a single day of detective work, sitting in the captain's chair on day one? I'd been grinding in this field for over a decade, from beat investigator to deputy captain, step by step. Having someone parachuted in above me. Yeah, that pissed me off. That's the truth. I let him talk. But after yesterday, I completely changed my mind. He looked me in the eyes without flinching. That hostage situation, the distance, the angle, a moving target, I couldn't guarantee I'd make that shot myself. And then the evidence you brought back, I saw it. It was the real deal. You got in one day what we couldn't get in years. I couldn't have done that. He paused and looked up at me. You're someone who gets things done. My mouth twitched slightly. I don't care whether you accept me or not, I said, my voice quiet but firm. This mole has to be found. I'm with you on this. Li Chun's eyes were hard with determination. He looked like he was one step away from swearing a blood oath with me right then and there. I nodded. Just then, a loud voice cut through from the main office. Who is Hanmu? The voice was authoritative, official-sounding, and it didn't leave room for argument. Curious, I turned and opened the door. 3 men stood in the middle of the office floor, impossible to miss. The one in front was in his 50s, wearing a dark blue jacket with an inspector's badge on his chest. Behind him were 2 young officers, one holding a notebook, the other carrying a black briefcase. I'm Hanmu, I said, walking up to the man. He looked me up and down, pulled out his credentials, and held them in front of my face. I'm Zhou Jun, Captain of Internal Affairs Division 2. Hanmu, you are suspected of violent law enforcement, extracting confessions through torture, and fabricating evidence. We are conducting an investigation. Please cooperate. The whole office went dead silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at me. Some couldn't hide their smirks. Others pretended not to watch while their eyes kept drifting over. I kept my face blank, took his credentials, looked them over carefully, and handed them back. Violent law enforcement? Extracting confessions. My voice was flat.
No emotion.
Zhou Jun explained in an official tone. Song Yu, the owner of Zhongshan Club, had filed a formal complaint against me. She claimed I beat her to extract a confession last night. She'd provided a hospital report, multiple fractures all over her body, shattered nose bridge, cracked brow bone, cheekbone, and jaw, classified as serious bodily harm. On top of that, the evidence I'd submitted had been examined by the forensics lab and determined to be AI-generated fake materials. So, I was also suspected of fabricating evidence. I said nothing. My expression didn't change. Li Chun had followed me out of the office. I could see his face go white. He was worried but didn't say anything. I could tell what he was thinking. Gao Jiangwei was already striking back, and faster than anyone expected. Arrested last night, evidence swapped by morning, and now internal affairs at the door. The speed meant Gao Jiangwei's people inside the system were more powerful than Li Chun had imagined. I glanced at Lee Chun and gave him a small nod. Don't worry. Then I turned back to Zhou Jun and casually pulled out my phone. Let me send a message. He frowned but didn't stop me. I typed one line and hit send. The TV drama thing happened. I've been accused of violent law enforcement, extracting confessions through torture, and fabricating evidence. The message went to Commander Jiang. I pocketed my phone and looked at Zhou Jun. Let's go. He stepped aside and gestured the way. I walked ahead with my hands in my pockets, stride easy and light. Officers lined the hallway as I passed. Some looked pleased to see me in trouble. Some looked sorry. Some just looked confused. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in a military compound west of the capital, Commander Jiang was in the middle of a high-level meeting. Over 100 officers in a large conference hall, a massive tactical deployment map on the screen behind him, stars on every shoulder. He'd just wrapped up approving an exercise plan when his aide knocked on the door and brought him his phone. The aide leaned in close and whispered that I'd sent a message. Commander Jiang read the single line on the screen. His face went from serious to furious. Bastards, he hissed through his teeth. Every officer in the room froze mid-step, staring at him, none daring to speak. He didn't explain. He shoved back his chair with a screech, stood up, and marched out. His aide had to jog to keep up. Find out everything about what Lepian County Public Security Bureau did to Hanmu this morning, he ordered. 10 minutes. I want answers. Yes, sir. The aide sprinted off. Commander Jiang stood at his office window, staring out at the gray sky, face dark as storm clouds. He'd raised me from a raw recruit to the top sniper in the entire military region. He knew exactly what kind of person I was. Violent law enforcement? Torture? Fabricating evidence? Bullshit. Sure, I can be rough. Sure, I hit hard. But I've never broken the law, and I'd never stooped to something as low as faking evidence.
Someone was targeting me.
And whoever had the guts to mess with one of his people was going to find out what that meant. Back at the Public Security Bureau, I sat in Internal Affairs interview room. Small space, about 10 square meters. Long table, 3 chairs, a camera in the corner, blinds pulled shut. I leaned back lazily in my chair. Zhou Jun sat across from me with his notebook open, a young officer beside him ready to write everything down. He read me the formal notice, my rights to make statements and defend myself, the regulations this fell under, the standard language. Do you understand? Yes, I said. Last night around 7 p.m., did you visit Jiangshan Club? I did. What was the purpose of your visit? To investigate and gather evidence. Song Yu is Gao Jiangwei's mistress. She likely had evidence of his crimes. Zhou Jun wrote in his notebook and asked if I used violence against Song Yu.
No, I said.
His pen stopped. He looked up at me, then pulled out a paper from his folder, Song Yu's injury report. Multiple fractures, shattered nose bridge, cracked brow bone, cheekbone, and jaw, classified as serious bodily harm. She identified me as the one who did it. The club's security footage was conveniently lost due to a system malfunction, but 12 witnesses, all her own employees, pointed the finger at me. I glanced at the report with disgust. She says I hit her, so it must be true, I said. Where's the proof? That injury report only proves she got hurt. It doesn't prove I did it. Her so-called witnesses are all her own people. You should know better than me how much weight testimony from interested parties carries in court. Zhou Jun stared at me for a few seconds. He hadn't expected me to push back this hard. As for the fake evidence, I continued, my tone even flatter. What I brought in was real. If it turned into fakes by the time it reached your forensics lab, maybe Internal Affairs should be investigating that instead. He frowned. We're investigating you for violent law enforcement and fabricating evidence. Don't change the subject. I'm not changing anything. I'm stating facts. You want to investigate me? Go ahead. But bring real evidence. You can't convict me based on the word of a crime boss's mistress and her goons. I looked at him with a hint of contempt. Is this really all Internal Affairs can do? His face darkened. He closed his folder and stood up. We are formally opening a case against you. Your police credentials, weapon, and badge number are suspended effective immediately. During the investigation, you'll be confined to a designated location within the Bureau. No going out. No outside contact. I leaned back in my chair. Does anything I say actually matter? He didn't answer. I laughed and shook my head. Someone clearly didn't want me cleared. I stood up, straightened my collar, and followed them out. What I learned later filled in the rest. Across town at his mansion, Gao Jiangwei was lounging on his sofa in fresh clothes, not a trace of his overnight stay in detention. He was sipping whiskey and asking Fang Kuan for updates. Fang Kuan told him internal affairs had taken me away. 3 charges running at once: violent law enforcement, torture, fabricated evidence. At minimum, I'd be fired. Gao Jiangwei smiled and raised his glass in celebration. He thought he'd already won. Then he made a phone call. The voice on the other end belonged to an older man, clearly someone in the system, someone with power. They discussed my case. The man said they didn't have solid physical evidence yet, just Song Yu's testimony. I was holding firm and not admitting anything. No evidence, Gao Jiangwei said.
Simple.
Make some. The man on the phone paused, then mentioned that whoever was backing me might be someone significant. A 25-year-old woman getting appointed captain straight out of the military doesn't happen without connections. Gao Jiangwei's eyes turned cold. I don't care who's behind her. In Leping, I'm the one who calls the shots. 4 hours later, a new piece of evidence was submitted to the forensics lab. A complete surveillance video supposedly showing everything I did inside Jiangshan Club. In the video, I walked in without showing any ID. I went straight to the 2nd floor. In the hallway, nobody blocked my path, nobody came near me, but I pulled out a baton and started beating unarmed security guards unprovoked. Over a dozen men, beaten bloody. Then I barged into Song Yu's office, grabbed her by the hair without a word, and smashed her face into the coffee table. Once, twice, 3 times. Until she was on her knees begging. The video had no signs of editing. Continuous timestamps. Clear picture.
Complete audio.
A perfect forgery. The evidence chain was complete now. That night, I was transferred from the Bureau's designated monitoring area to Leping County Detention Center. I sat in the back of the police car with an internal affairs officer on each side, watching the nighttime scenery slide past the window. I leaned back in the car seat and closed my eyes. No expression on my face. At the detention center, they processed me and put me in a single cell. Small room, iron bed, toilet, sink, concrete walls, no window. Just a light on the ceiling that never turns off. I sat on the bed with my back against the wall, legs stretched out, hands folded on my stomach. I stared at that light for a few seconds, then closed my eyes. Never thought I'd end up in a place like this. Kind of funny, actually, but that's not what was on my mind. What I was thinking was, why hadn't Commander Jiang made a move yet? What I didn't know was that he'd already set things in motion. The next morning, in the Provincial Public Security Department headquarters, Director Zhao Weigua, a sharp-eyed man in his early 60s with silver hair and a police supervisor's badge on his shoulder, picked up a phone that rarely rings. When it does, it's always something big. The call came from the Central Military Commission's Joint Staff Department. They told him about my situation. They said I was an outstanding military officer with an encrypted high-level file. They said they believed in my character and abilities. If I'd truly broken the law, they wouldn't protect me. But if I was being framed, they wanted the organization to clear my name. Director Zhao said he'd personally look into it. Then he picked up the internal line and called Leping County Public Security Bureau directly. When he got the bureau chief, Tan Wei, on the phone, he asked about my situation. Tan Wei started explaining the charges: violent enforcement, torture, fabricated evidence, transferred to detention. Release her, Director Zhao said. His voice wasn't loud, but there was zero room for negotiation. Tan Wei tried to mention that the case was already formally opened, that procedures. I said release her. The voice dropped lower, heavier. 2 seconds of silence. Then, yes, sir. I'll arrange it immediately. What happened next is something I pieced together later. Tan Wei immediately called Mao Long, the deputy director who oversaw our criminal investigation unit. Mao Long was having breakfast at home when his phone buzzed. Release Han Mu. Now, Tan Wei told him. The provincial department called directly. They want her out immediately. Mao Long's chopsticks fell onto the table. His face went white. The provincial department. My case had reached the provincial level. He'd known I had backing, but he never imagined it went this high. High enough for the provincial director to personally call and order my release. He'd been played by Gao Jiangwei. Or rather, he'd been done in by his own greed and arrogance. With trembling fingers, he called Gao Jiangwei. Something happened, Mao Long said, his voice drained of energy. Han Mu has people behind her. The provincial department personally ordered her release. Gao Jiangwei's sleepy voice sharpened instantly. What did you say? We can't hold this line anymore, Mao Long told him. Once the provincial department gets involved, all the evidence gets re-examined. That surveillance video, those forensic reports, none of it holds up under real scrutiny. A long silence on the other end. Heavy breathing through the receiver. The provincial department, Gao Jiangwei finally said, a clear note of unease in his voice. She can pull strings at that level. It's not strings, Mao Long whispered. This isn't a favor someone called in. This is an order. More silence. I understand, Gao Jiangwei said, his voice suddenly and unnervingly calm. The line went dead. Mao Long stared at his phone, frowning. Gao Jiangwei's reaction wasn't right. Usually the man either explodes with rage or makes cold threats. This quiet calm was something different, something worse. What Mao Long didn't know was that his own fear was well-founded. Once I got out, I was absolutely going to hunt down every person who set me up. The cell door clicked open. A guard stood there with a set of keys, looking at me with a complicated expression. Han Mu, you can go. I didn't move right away. Go! My voice was raspy from sleep. Where? Back where you came from. I looked at him for 2 seconds, then my mouth slowly curved into a smile. I stood up, straightened my collar, and walked to the door at my own pace. As I passed the guard, I stopped. Keep my bed ready. I might be back. His mouth twitched, but he said nothing. I stepped outside. The morning sunlight made me squint. I took a deep breath, cool air mixed with the smell of oil from a nearby breakfast stall. I pulled out my phone. 30% battery. A dozen unread messages I didn't bother opening. I called Zhang Yu first. Zhang Yu, grab your people and Jiangyan. Emerald Bay Villa District. Now. Captain Han, he sounded shocked, but recovered fast. Copy that. I hung up and flagged a taxi. What was happening on the other end, I found out later. Gao Jiangwei was sitting on his bed, phone clutched, so tight his knuckles were white. The woman sleeping next to him had been startled awake by his fist slamming on the mattress. One look at his face, and she shrank to the far side of the bed without a word. He walked barefoot to the window. Dawn was just breaking, landscape lights still glowing, mist hovering over the garden fountain. But he wasn't admiring the view. Mao Long's words were crushing him. Provincial department. Order. Those 2 words sat on his chest like mountains. 25 years he'd built his empire in Leping. County police, prosecutors, courts, he had people in every layer. But the provincial department? His reach didn't go that far. For the first time, he wasn't just afraid of getting arrested. It was deeper than that. He realized he might have picked a fight with someone he absolutely could not beat. A woman who could make the provincial police director personally call and demand her release. If he kept fighting me, he would lose. That much was clear. He went to his closet, pulled out a black travel bag, and started stuffing things inside. Passport. Hundreds of thousands in cash. Bank cards under different names. A clean shirt. The woman on the bed watched, face changing. Where are you going? He didn't answer. He grabbed car keys from a drawer, then called Fong Kuan. Get a car ready. I'm leaving right now. Where to? Fong Kuan asked, startled.
Airport.
Province capital first, then fly out from there. I'll give you the route on the way. What happened? That woman's backers showed up. Provincial investigators are coming. If I don't leave now, it'll be too late. Understood. I'll arrange it. Gao Jiangwei zipped the bag. Light enough to move fast. Then he heard the screech of brakes outside. Multiple vehicles. He froze. Walked to the window. Pulled the curtain aside just enough to peek down. 5 police SUVs were parked at his front gate. Officers in uniform were jumping out one after another. And standing in the middle of them, A woman with short hair, blue t-shirt, dark pants.
Me.
His pupils shrank. He hadn't expected me to come this fast. Less than 20 minutes since Maolong's call. He'd assumed they'd need at least until the afternoon to process my release. He was wrong. The first thing I did after walking free was come straight for him. He dropped the travel bag on the floor and stormed downstairs. Boss. Boss. The woman called after him.
Shut up, he snapped.
Downstairs, Fong Kuan and the butler Li Xin stood with over a dozen bodyguards, all in black suits. They parted to let him through. There are a lot of police outside, Li Xin said, his voice trembling. Gao Jiangwei looked through the peephole. I was already in his yard with over 20 detectives behind me. Some had guns. Some had batons. Some held body cameras. It looked like a military operation. Stop her, Gao Jiangwei said, voice low and vicious. The bodyguards looked at each other, unsure. I said stop her. Are you all deaf? They glanced at one another, then walked out the front door with gritted teeth. 2 bodyguards blocked my path, a bald one and a buzz cut, both huge guys, easily over 6 feet and well past 200 pounds each. Behind them stood another dozen or so in black suits. I only had Jiang Yan, Zhang Yu, and 4 or 5 detectives with me. The rest were spread around the yard, covering the other exits. Zhang Yu leaned in. Captain Han, should we call for backup? I didn't answer. I took 2 steps forward and stood right in front of the wall of muscle. Sunlight was at my back, casting my shadow across them. Leping County Criminal Investigation Unit. Official business. Move. Nobody moved. The bald one started tapping a baton against his palm. This is Private Resi. He didn't finish the word. I kicked him square in the kneecap. The crack was loud and clear. His knee shattered on the spot. He fell forward, face first into the steps, knocked out 2 front teeth, blood everywhere. He couldn't even scream, just lay there twitching. The buzz cut went white. He'd heard rumors about what I did at Jiangshan Club the night before. He hadn't believed them. Now he did. Behind me, my own team was frozen too. Zhang Yu's mouth hung open, his baton gripped but forgotten. He told me later he'd been doing this for over a decade and had never seen someone break a bone that casually. He said he glanced down at his own knees and felt grateful that he'd only ever given me attitude, never tried to fight me. Jiang Yan was thinking similar thoughts. He remembered how arrogant and dismissive he'd been toward me the past 2 days. He said a chill ran down his spine when he realized what could have happened if he'd actually made me angry. I took another step forward. All the remaining bodyguards took a step back in unison. I said move. Nobody moved. But nobody dared come at me either. I sighed, loud enough for them all to hear my impatience. I glanced back at my team. Follow me. I walked straight ahead like there was nothing in my way. Their formation crumbled. The ones in front tried to dodge sideways, but the ones behind blocked them. The whole group started pushing into each other, panicking. Stop her. The boss said stop her. The buzz cut screamed. 3 of the braver ones rushed me at once. One swung a baton at my head. Another threw a punch at my temple. The third lunged to grab my waist. I smirked. Gutsy. I tilted my head to dodge the baton, grabbed the guy's wrist, yanked him forward, and punched his elbow joint. His arm bent the wrong way with a crack. The baton clattered to the ground. Before he even fell, I spun and planted my foot into the second guy's chest. He flew backward like he'd been hit by a car, crashing into 2 or 3 others. The third one never touched me. My elbow came down on the back of his skull with a heavy thud. He dropped face first and didn't move. Under 2 seconds. All 3 down. A young detective jogged up behind Zhang Yu and whispered, which unit was Captain Han in before? Zhang Yu didn't answer. He didn't know. He just knew he never wanted to be on my bad side. The remaining bodyguards all stepped back together. Done already? I asked. They looked at each other. Nobody moved. I took a step forward. They took 2 steps back. Another step. 2 more back. This kept going until they were pressed against the villa's front door with nowhere left to go. I kicked the one in front out of the way. He didn't resist, didn't even look at me, and kicked the front door open. Gao Jiangwei was standing in the middle of his living room, clutching a black travel bag, face ashen, lips trembling slightly. He'd been trying to run. Gao Jiangwei, I said, standing across from him. My blue t-shirt was spattered with fresh blood, and there was blood on my arms too. We meet again. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Captain Han, his voice was hoarse. You really don't waste any time. I didn't bother replying. I jerked my chin at Zhang Yu. Zhang Yu and two detectives rushed forward and grabbed Gao Jiangwei from both sides. Gao Jiangwei, you are suspected of organizing and leading a criminal syndicate, murder, rape, provocation, forced transactions, and bribery. You are hereby placed under criminal detention. Zhang Yu rattled off the charges and pulled out handcuffs.
Click.
Steel locked around Gao Jiangwei's wrists. Again. Fan Kuan and everyone else in the villa got cuffed too. Gao Jiangwei looked down at the handcuffs, and his face went from white to green and back again. He knew he couldn't run. Police at every door, every exit, every road. I'll walk myself, he hissed through his teeth, trying to shake off the detectives holding his arms. I had no patience for his act. Enough talking. Take him. They pushed him out of the villa. The bodyguards I'd dealt with were still scattered across the yard, some groaning, some unconscious. Officers from the local station were already loading them onto stretchers. I got into the passenger seat. Zhang Yu shoved Gao Jiangwei into the back and hit the gas. All 5 police cars pulled out of Emerald Bay with sirens blaring, lights flashing in the morning sun. I peeled off my blood-spattered blue t-shirt and tossed it onto the back seat. Underneath, I had a black tank top. My arms were bare, muscle lines clearly visible. Zhang Yu stole a glance at me, but didn't say a word. I could tell what he was thinking. He'd seen tough people before, but never someone who cut through a dozen huge men like slicing vegetables. 10 minutes later, we pulled into the bureau compound. 5 cars in a row. A crowd of officers had already gathered in the yard, whispering to each other. I stepped out in my tank top and stretched. My joints popped a few times. Everyone stared. Nobody spoke. They'd all watched me get dragged away by internal affairs yesterday, thrown into a detention cell, slapped with 3 serious charges. Everyone thought I was finished. And now, the very next morning, I was back, and I'd walked right out of that cell, gone straight to the target, beaten my way through 20-plus bodyguards, and dragged the suspect back in handcuffs. Zhang Yu pulled Gao Jiangwei out of the back seat. Head down, cuffs jingling, flanked by 2 detectives. Fan Kuan and the rest of the inner circle were hauled from the other cars behind him, all looking defeated. Li Chun came out of the building with a cigarette, looking like he hadn't slept. He glanced at Gao Jiangwei, then at me, and gave a nod. Good work. I was about to say something when a loud crash came from above.
Bang.
Not an explosion. Something heavy hitting the ground from high up. Deep, thick, final. Everyone looked up at the same time. My pupils tightened. On the concrete in front of the building, a body lay face down. Dark jacket, black pants, dress shoes. His head was twisted at an impossible angle. Dark red blood was spreading fast beneath him. Half his face was turned to the side. Mao Long. I didn't move. Director Mao. Someone screamed, voice cracking. Officers rushed forward. Someone checked for breathing. Someone pulled out a phone to call an ambulance. Someone just stood there staring. Someone turned away and vomited. Li Chun reached the body first. He froze like he'd been nailed to the ground. His mouth hung open. The cigarette slipped from his fingers and landed at the edge of the blood pool with a quiet hiss. Zhang Yu was still holding Gao Jiangwei's arm, completely rigid, unable to speak. Jiang Yan stepped out of his car, saw the blood and the twisted body, and went pale. He stumbled back against the car door. Gao Jiangwei turned to look. One glance was enough. He recognized Mao Long instantly, the shape of the face, the hair, even under all that blood. It's over, Gao Jiangwei whispered, so quiet only the people beside him could hear. It's all over. His face went from gray to deathly pale. His lips shook violently. His eyes turned red, and a choking sound came from his throat. His legs buckled, and the 2 detectives nearly dropped him. He knew Mao Long didn't kill himself. He'd known the man for decades. Mao Long loved his life too much to jump. Someone made him jump. And Gao Jiangwei knew exactly who. The person above Mao Long in the chain, someone even higher up, had cut the thread. Killed Mao Long to make sure the investigation stopped here. It wouldn't go any further up. Gao Jiangwei suddenly felt cold down to his bones. Because he understood now, to the people above him, he was just a dog. And when the door is about to collapse, the dog gets put down. Nobody was coming to save him. I stood 5 meters away, watching the body. My face showed nothing. I barely knew Mao Long. We shook hands once on my first day. That was it. While everyone around me was shaking, staring, or falling apart, my brain was working on something else. I looked at the body. Then I looked at Gao Jiangwei, a crime boss, a man who'd seen everything, now trembling like a scared child just because a police director had died. That reaction was too extreme. Unless Gao Jiangwei knew something. Unless Mao Long's death meant something bigger. I narrowed my eyes and filed those two things together in my mind. I stared at Mao Long's face for a few seconds. Then I turned, looked at Gao Jiangwei and said coldly, "Take him inside." Zhang Yi snapped out of it, yanked Gao Jiangwei by the arm, and dragged him into the interrogation room. Meanwhile, somewhere in the provincial capital, though I wouldn't learn this until much later, an old man sat in a dim office, turning a black chess piece between his fingers. He dropped it into the trash can. A quiet thud. The piece disappeared into the dark. Back at headquarters, Gao Jiangwei confessed everything. He sat in the interrogation chair, handcuffed to the armrests, gray-faced, cracked lips, red swollen eyes. He looked like a man who'd been hollowed out. He gave up every crime Zhongshan Group had committed over the years. Murder for hire, rape, forced construction deals, bribery, money laundering, all of it, written into the record in black and white. And he named Mao Long. Mao Long was my protection. He fed me information from the City Bureau's internal affairs. Your operation plans every single time, he told me in advance. His voice was flat, like he was reading his own obituary. He knew nobody was coming to save him anymore. With Mao Long dead, the chain was cut. So he talked. At least he might save his own life. Li Chun came out of interrogation room, looking like a ghost. He couldn't even smoke his cigarette, lit it, let it die, lit it again, 3 times without taking a single drag. He leaned against the wall with his eyes closed. He'd suspected people in the bureau, even questioned everyone at some point. But never Mao Long. Mao Long was the deputy director in charge of criminal investigations. The man Li Chun respected most. The guy who slammed the table at every meeting shouting about cracking down on organized crime. Who personally commanded every major operation. And the whole time, he was the biggest criminal protector of them all. No wonder every operation was always one step too late. The rot started at the top. Li Chun crushed his cigarette against the wall and slammed his office door so hard the whole hallway shook. I got home around 10 that night. Took a long shower. Stood under the hot water with my eyes closed. Thinking. From walking out of the detention center that morning, to arresting Gao Jiangwei again, to Mao Long's body on the concrete. And then Gao Jiangwei spilling everything before we even started properly questioning him. Mao Long was the man behind Gao Jiangwei. But would a veteran cop, 20-plus years in the system, a deputy director who'd survived every storm, really jump off a building just because things went bad? I didn't think so. But then I stopped myself. I'm a criminal investigation captain, not internal affairs, not the discipline commission, not anti-corruption. My job is putting people like Gao Jiangwei behind bars. Whatever was above Mao Long. That wasn't my problem right now. I flopped onto my bed and buried my face in the pillow. Almost drifted off. Then my phone started buzzing nonstop. I picked it up, irritated. Douyin, Weibo, news apps, all blowing up with my name. Weibo's #1 trending topic, female detective takes on 20 gangsters alone, with a big orange, viral, tag next to it. Someone had filmed me at Emerald Bay that morning, me fighting through the bodyguards. The angle was a bit off, but the footage was clear. 1 punch, 1 kick, men dropping left and right. The video had over 50 million views in under 2 hours. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. This sister's back. Beautiful and fierce. 1 person versus 20 gangsters. Is this even real? Where are the people who called her violent last time? Come say something now. I'm from Leping. Zhongshan Group terrorized our county for years. demolitions, beatings, driving people to death. Nobody dared touch them. This policewoman shows up for 2 days and arrests the boss twice. I don't care if it's violent. I support her. Captain Han, the people of Leping owe you a banner. Captain Han, are you single? Marry me. Are you sure you can survive one of her punches? No, but I'm willing to try. I scrolled through a few comments, my mouth twitching. These internet people really have too much free time. I was about to close the app when the 5th trending topic caught my eye. Leping County Deputy Director Mao Long commits suicide by jumping. The comments there had a completely different tone. People calling it what it was, a corrupt official who was protecting the mob, killing himself before he could be caught.
Most said he deserved it.
I put the phone down on the nightstand and was about to close my eyes when it buzzed one more time. A WeChat message. The message was from Jean Nan. Old Han saw you trending. Nice work. Whenever you're ready to come join me, VIP treatment. I stared at it for 2 seconds, mouth curving slightly. This guy was still trying to recruit me. I locked the screen and tossed the phone aside.
Didn't reply.
Lights off.
Sleep.
Next morning, 5 o'clock sharp. My eyes opened before the alarm. Years of military routine had wired my internal clock. It never failed. I sat up, stretched until my joints popped, and got ready. Today I put on the police uniform I'd picked up from logistics yesterday. Dark blue shirt, navy pants. The shoulder was empty. My rank badge hadn't been approved yet. I checked myself in the mirror, straightened the collar, and looked left and right. Not bad. Not that I was being vain, I just looked good in everything. I grabbed my police ID, car keys, and headed out for breakfast. At 8 o'clock, I walked into headquarters. Every officer I passed in the hallway greeted me. Morning, Captain Han. Morning, Captain Han. Good morning, Captain Han, each one louder than the last. I nodded and kept walking. In the main office, dozens of heads turned at once. Good morning, Captain Han, all at the same time, like they'd rehearsed it. Zhang Yu came over with a thick folder. Gao Jiangwei's interrogation transcript, all organized. Every page signed and fingerprinted. I flipped through a few pages and told him to leave it on my desk. Li Chun called me into his office. He handed me a document. The provincial department was holding a meeting at 10 that morning to address Mao Long's situation and discuss who would fill the deputy director position. Bureau Chief Tan Wei had already left for the provincial capital. I scanned the document and handed it back. What does this have to do with us? Nothing, really. Just letting you know. With Mao Long gone, the upper ranks are going to shift. No idea who gets the deputy spot. I nodded and walked out. I didn't care who became deputy director, as long as they didn't get in my way. At the provincial meeting, they classified Mao Long's death as suicide driven by guilt. Case closed. For the deputy director vacancy, the political department recommended a guy named Chen Zheng, 23 years on the force, strong record, multiple commendations. Director Zhao approved it and told them to push the paperwork through. Bureau Chief Tan Wei drove back to Leping feeling uneasy. He'd had suspicions about Mao Long, but actually losing a colleague he'd worked with for years still stung. 3 days later, everything changed. Director Zhao received a fax from the Ministry of Public Security in Beijing. He read it 3 times. First time, he thought he'd misread it. Second time, he confirmed he hadn't. Third time, he finally accepted it. The ministry had directly rejected the provincial department's nominee for deputy director. No reason given. Just a single directive. The candidate for Leping County's deputy director overseeing criminal investigations had already been designated. 2 characters.
Hanmu.
Director Zhao stared at my name for several seconds. He'd thought I was backed by some military district connection. Now he realized he'd underestimated the situation. Getting the Ministry of Public Security itself to intervene, that wasn't something a regional military connection could pull off. He didn't overthink it. Decades in the system had taught him that some things don't need to be understood. They just need to be carried out. He picked up the phone and issued the order. Bureau Chief Tan Wei sat in his office staring at the fax for 15 minutes. He couldn't believe it. Not Chen Zhengmi, a military transfer who'd been here less than a week. A captain who'd barely warmed her uniform. Jumping straight to deputy director. What kind of speed was that? He wasn't stupid. He knew what it meant. The next day, I was sitting in my office around 11:30, feet up on the desk, scrolling through Douyin on my phone. Trending number 3, Hanmu Deputy Director. I stared at those words for 2 seconds and frowned. Deputy Director? What Deputy Director? I clicked on the trending topic. The top post was from Leping County Public Security Bureau's official account, posted 15 minutes ago, approved by the Ministry of Public Security. The Provincial Public Security Department has decided to appoint Comrade Han Mu as Deputy Director of Leping County Public Security Bureau. My feet came off the desk. I sat up straight and read it again. Every word made sense individually. Strung together, they didn't compute. When did this happen?
Who nominated me?
Who approved it? Why didn't anyone ask me? The hallway was already going crazy. Captain Han, no wait. Director Han. Zhang Yu came running over, grinning from ear to ear, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. Did you see the news? Your deputy director. I leaned back, arms crossed, face blank. I saw it. You're not happy? I didn't answer. I'd been at the Criminal Investigation Unit for barely a few days. My chair wasn't even warm yet, and now deputy director? That was absurdly fast. Sure, I'd done good work, but the police system doesn't promote like this. My first reaction wasn't excitement, it was worry. Deputy directors sit in offices. They attend meetings, sign documents, manage people. If I became deputy director, how would I go out on calls? How would I chase down suspects? How would I fight? Screw being a director. Nothing beats real action.
But then I thought about it.
Even as deputy director, whether I go out in the field or not is still up to me. That made me feel better. Behind Zhang Yu, the entire office was on their feet. Clapping, whistling, cheering. Director Han is mighty. Director Han, you're buying lunch today, right? I scanned the room. Don't you all have work to do? The room went silent instantly. Are all your cases solved? I added with a hint of sarcasm. Get back to it. Everyone laughed and scattered. Moving into the deputy director's office took me 20 minutes. I didn't own much, a few files, a notebook, a pen, a spare set of clothes. One cardboard box. The new office was on the 4th floor, twice the size of my old one. Floor-to-ceiling windows facing the bureau's front gate. Real wood desk, leather chair. Comfortable. I set my box down, pulled open the curtains, and let the sunlight flood in. I stood at the window looking down at the police cars and people coming and going. Then I heard shouting from below. Loud, angry, getting closer. I leaned out and looked. A woman in her 40s or 50s was standing at the Criminal Investigation Unit's entrance, screaming and crying. Her voice was shrill and desperate. I frowned and went downstairs. A crowd had gathered. Li Chun was trying to calm the woman down, but she shoved him away. What are you police even good for? My daughter's been missing for 3 days. You won't even look for her. I'll get on my knees if that's what it takes. She actually started to drop to the ground. Li Chun grabbed her just in time. Ma'am, please don't get worked up. We've opened a case. We're investigating. Investigating. That's all you ever say. 3 days and nothing. If something happened to my daughter, I'll kill myself, her voice echoed across the yard.
Gut-wrenching sobs.
My daughter is only 19. She's in college. A perfectly fine girl, just gone. 2 female officers came and helped lead her toward the reception room. Her cries faded, but I could still hear her screaming. Find her. Just find her. I went back upstairs and called Li Chun on the internal line. Come up. 2 minutes later, he walked in. His eyes were red, either from no sleep or from dealing with that scene downstairs. What's the story? I asked. Case filed 3 days ago. 19-year-old college freshman named Chen Yutong, local girl, studying in the provincial capital. Last Friday, she took a bus home to Leping, got off at the station around 2 in the afternoon, and vanished. Who's on it? Zhao Zheng. Get him up here. A few minutes later, Zhao Zheng jogged in, face pale. Director Han, you've had this missing person case for 3 days. What have you found? Sweat started forming on his forehead. We pulled surveillance from the surrounding area. Her last sighting was near the East bus station. And then nothing. My voice went cold. There's a blind spot in the camera coverage. We're expanding the search radius. Expanding the search. Expanding the search. I repeated his words back, clearly annoyed. Is that the only thing your team knows how to say? His face went red, then white. He didn't dare respond. Lee Chun stood beside him, looking uncomfortable. But he kept quiet because I was right. 3 days in, and they didn't even have a direction. This is the 4th case, Lee Chun said, his voice tight. All dead ends. The victims are all young women between 15 and 22. They all disappeared near bus stations, malls, or schools. My fingers tapped the desk twice. I stared at Zhao Zheng. 4 missing person cases and 0 progress. My voice wasn't loud, but the pressure behind it made the sweat pour down his back even faster. Zhao Zheng told me the suspect vehicle was likely an unmarked blue Wuling minivan, but the model and condition were uncertain. Surveillance caught it once, but the angle was bad. Couldn't see the driver. He said the suspect had strong counter-investigation awareness. Every trail went cold at camera-blind spots. Suspected, uncertain, can't see. I turned those words over in my head. That's it? I asked. That's it. I stood up and walked to the window. Wuling minivans are everywhere. Looking for one specific unmarked van is like searching for a needle in the ocean. I'm taking this case personally, I said. Lee Chun started to object. Director Han, you're the deputy director now. So what? Deputy directors can't work cases. He opened his mouth, then shut it. He wanted to say that deputy directors sit in offices and give orders. But he looked at my eyes and swallowed those words. He knew I wasn't the type to sit behind a desk signing paperwork. I told them I wanted all evidence compiled by 3 o'clock. Zhao Zheng would keep working the case, Lee Chun would coordinate overall, and Zhang Yu and Jiang Yan would each lead a team for separate searches. After they left, I sat tapping my desk, thinking. 4 missing persons. All young women. Last seen near bus stations or malls.
Camera blind spots.
Unmarked minivan. This wasn't random. This was organized, premeditated crime. At 3 o'clock, Zhao Zheng delivered the compiled report. 30-plus pages, surveillance screenshots, interview records, timeline analysis, vehicle comparisons. I read everything in under 20 minutes, then spread a map of Leping County on my desk and marked the 4 disappearance locations in red. Bus station. East City Mall. Pedestrian Street. West City Night Market. For points covering most of the urban area. But one area caught my attention, the East Development Zone. Lots of construction, transient workers, few cameras. 2 of the 4 cases had their last surveillance footage pointing in that direction. I circled the East Development Zone in red and stared at it. Then I called Lee Chun back up. I asked about the area. He said it was mostly construction sites with high population turnover. Nothing major, except last month someone reported a warehouse with frequent vehicle activity at night. They'd checked it out and were told it was normal logistics. Which warehouse? I asked. He couldn't remember. Needed to check the police records. Find out.
Today, I paused.
Also, get me a set of plain clothes. Nothing police-looking. The more ordinary, the better. His eyebrows nodded. Director Han, what are you planning? I leaned back and let my mouth curve slightly. Fishing. His face changed. You're going undercover yourself? No way. Too dangerous. If something happens, stop talking. Go get it ready. He wanted to argue more but held back. He knew that once I decide something, nobody changes my mind. The next afternoon, I was standing outside the East Bus Station wearing a white t-shirt, dark jeans, and sneakers. Short hair, no makeup. I looked like a college student who'd just come home for break. I wandered through the crowd with a small backpack, then stood at the bus stop pretending to check my phone. But my eyes were scanning everything. A blue Wuling minivan was parked on the roadside. The license plate was covered with dead insects, conveniently obscuring the numbers. Dark window tint. Couldn't see inside. My pupils tightened slightly. The fish was here. I kept my head down, acting natural. The van sat there for about 2 minutes, then drove off. I watched which direction it went, then texted Lee Chun. Blue Wuling, no plates, heading toward East Development Zone. Follow it, he replied instantly. Got it. I kept loitering at the station. I was betting that if this was really the van I was looking for, the people inside had already spotted me. A lone young woman, casually dressed, looking lost. I was the perfect target. 15 minutes later, The blue van came back. It crawled past me slowly. The window rolled down a crack. Someone inside was looking at me. I pretended not to notice. The van turned around at the intersection and parked 30 meters away. I cursed under my breath. These people were more cautious than I'd expected. First pass to check the environment. Second pass to confirm the target. Now parked at a distance, waiting for the right moment. I kept up the act. Walked to the bus stop sign, frowned at the route map, sighed, and turned to walk toward the station entrance. I'd taken maybe 20 steps when I heard the van door slide open behind me. "Hey, beautiful, where are you headed? Want a ride?" A man's voice. I turned around. A guy who looked about 40 stood next to the van, wearing blue-gray work clothes, a friendly smile plastered on his face. He looked like an ordinary construction worker, the kind of face you'd never suspect. His eyes swept over me twice, paused on my backpack, then settled on my face. "No thanks, I'll wait for the bus," I said, stepping back half a step, putting a little nervousness into my voice. "The bus only comes every half hour around here," the man said, walking closer with a dumb, friendly grin. "I'm heading into town to pick up goods anyway. It's free." I glanced at the van. Still couldn't see if anyone else was inside. "It's just me." "You think I'm gonna eat you?" He laughed, showing a mouthful of yellow teeth. I bit my lip, pretending to struggle with the decision. Then I looked up. "Really free?" Crossed my heart. "Okay then, thanks." I walked over with my head down, pulled open the van's middle door, and got in. Inside, I spotted another person in the passenger seat. Young guy, maybe mid-20s, skinny, wearing a black t-shirt, head down scrolling his phone. The door closed. The van rocked slightly. "Buckle up," Yellow Teeth said, starting the engine. I leaned back and scanned both of them, the driver and the skinny one. Neither looked like they'd trained in anything physical. "Where are we headed?" I asked casually. "East Side. Logistics Park. I'll drop you at a bus stop nearby, one stop to downtown." "Oh, thanks." I pulled out my phone and texted Lee Chun. "I'm in the van."
2 people.
"Heading east. Keep your distance. Don't follow too close," he replied instantly. "Copy." The van drove for about 20 minutes. The road got narrower. Buildings shrank from apartments to houses to factories to wasteland. "This doesn't look like the way to the logistics park," I said, adding a hint of worry to my voice. "Shortcut." "Don't worry." His tone was still friendly, but I noticed his hand slide under his seat. The skinny one put down his phone and leaned forward slightly. The van turned onto a dirt road lined with abandoned factories and overgrown weeds. Not a person in sight. A few hundred meters later, we stopped in front of a gray 2-story building. It looked like an old workshop. 3-meter walls topped with barbed wire. A rusted iron gate, closed. Yellow Teeth honked twice. The gate screeched open from inside. A young guy in a black t-shirt peeked out, looked at the van, then pulled back. The gate opened fully. We drove in. It clanged shut behind us. I scanned the yard through the window. 2 vehicles parked inside, a black SUV and a white cargo truck. Building materials and junk piled in the corners. 2 men stood at the building entrance, late 20s to early 30s, dressed casually. They looked like ordinary people, but their eyes were wrong. "We're here." "Get out," Yellow Teeth said, hopping down. I didn't move. "Come on, beautiful," he waved at me. "Where is this?" I let my voice shake a little. "My friend's factory."
Don't be scared.
"Come in for some water." He reached toward me. I ignored his hand and stepped out on my own. I stood in the yard and swept my eyes across the entire compound in one quick pass. "Let's go inside." He patted my shoulder. I followed him toward the building. Behind us, the skinny one whispered to Yellow Teeth, "Shouldn't we search her? She's just a woman." "What's she going to do?" Yellow Teeth scoffed. "Besides, even if she's got a phone, once she's inside, there's zero signal." God himself couldn't get reception in there. We walked through a corridor, past 2 doors, and stopped at a room with a heavy iron padlock. He fished out a key and unlocked it. "Wait in here a bit. I'll get you some water." He smiled at me. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. The lock clicked into place. I didn't turn around. My eyes were already scanning the room. About 20 square meters.
No windows.
1 dim yellow light bulb overhead. Peeling walls, uneven floor, moldy blankets piled in a corner. The air was thick with the smell of rot and something sour and sharp. It was like a place you'd keep animals. None of that bothered me. I'd been in worse. I pulled out my phone to send Lee Chun my location, but the signal was completely jammed. Nothing.
Fine.
I put the phone away, turned around, and walked deeper into the room. There was a dirty cloth hanging from a line, reeking of that sour smell. I pulled it aside. My breathing stopped. My mind went blank. Against the far wall, lying on old straw mats, were 7 or 8 young girls. Their faces were ghostly white, lips cracked and peeling, eye sockets sunken deep, cheekbones jutting out. They looked like skeletons that were barely still breathing. But what truly hit me wasn't how thin they were. It was their stomachs. Almost every single girl had a hugely swollen belly, stretched tight like a watermelon had been shoved inside, distorting their skeletal frames. They were all young. The oldest couldn't have been more than 20. The youngest was curled up in the corner, still had baby fat on her face, 15, maybe 16 at most. These girls should have been in school, running on playgrounds, shopping with friends, drinking milk tea, arguing about which celebrity was cutest, stressing over exams, worrying about diets. Instead, they were locked in this place that was worse than a pig pen, bellies swollen, used as breeding machines. I stood there, eyes moving from face to face. They looked back at me. There was no hope in any of their eyes. Just a hollow, empty despair. Some didn't even lift their heads. They just lay there staring at the ceiling, eyes unfocused, like the life had already left them. Something churned deep inside my chest. It made it hard to breathe. I've seen bodies blown apart beyond recognition. I've watched comrades fall in pools of blood and never get up. Those scenes I could handle with cold precision, shoot when you need to shoot, save who you need to save. But this was different. But in this moment, the string holding me together snapped. Because these weren't soldiers. These weren't criminals. These weren't anyone connected to war. They were just ordinary girls. They should have been living normal lives. Instead, they'd been dragged into a van, locked in a windowless room, and turned into breeding machines. Pregnant with God knows whose children, rotting in this filthy, damp hole, not knowing if they'd ever get out, not knowing if they'd survive. I took a deep breath. My fingers were shaking. That only happens when I'm angry beyond my limit. My fists clenched so hard my knuckles went white. My nails dug into my palms. I couldn't feel the pain. One thought filled my entire mind. These girls need me. Screw violent law enforcement. Screw everything else. I turned and faced the door. The soundproofing was terrible. I could hear those animals on the other side laughing, mocking how easy it is to trick young girls these days. I didn't want to listen. I wanted out. I wanted to turn every one of them into cripples. I kicked the door. The entire thing, door, frame, and all, ripped out of the wall and flew into the hallway. 7 or 8 men had been standing there smoking and chatting. The explosion of noise made them all jump back at once. What's wrong with this bitch? I stepped out. My hands slowly curled into fists at my sides, knuckles cracking. More of them started appearing from around corners, guys who'd been smoking, playing cards, dozing against walls. The hallway filled up fast. 20, maybe 30 men. Some held steel pipes. Some had switchblades. One guy was swinging a pool cue. The one in front was the most intimidating. A bald giant, well over 6 feet, arms thicker than my thighs, gripping a long machete wrapped in cloth tape. He looked me up and down and snorted, turned to his boys and laughed. "It's just one woman. Look how scared you all are. A woman with nothing on her? What you gonna do?" Someone made a crude joke. They all laughed. I didn't say a word, but every inch of me was radiating killing, intent cold enough to freeze bone marrow. The bald one was still laughing. Then I moved. One step. My foot slammed the floor, and I launched forward like a cannonball. He didn't even have time to react before my fist was in his face. His nose shattered into pieces. Blood sprayed from both nostrils. Before his head could snap back, my second punch hit his throat, dead center on the Adam's apple. His eyes bulged, mouth gaped open, but nothing came out except a wheezing, gurgling sound of a crushed windpipe. The machete fell from his hand. He grabbed his neck, face turning purple-black, and collapsed to the floor convulsing. Less than 1 second. The skinny one next to him screamed and lunged at me with a switchblade, aiming for my ribs. Nasty angle. I didn't even look. My left hand caught his wrist like a steel clamp.
Pulled him toward me.
Right fist smashed into his elbow joint.
Crack.
His arm folded the wrong way. White bone punched through the skin, bloody and raw. He screamed like a slaughtered pig. I kicked his kneecap. It disintegrated. His lower leg and upper leg were only connected by a flap of skin. He hit the ground, rolling and howling. The ones behind him went stupid with shock. I didn't give them time to think. I plowed into the crowd like an armored vehicle at full speed. Every punch found a face, teeth shattered. Every elbow found a joint, bones snapped. Every kick found a knee, nobody got back up. I didn't pause for a single second. Every strike was aimed at maximum damage. One guy swung a steel pipe at my head. I didn't even bother dodging. I raised my forearm and blocked it. The pipe bent on impact. My arm didn't move. His eyes nearly popped out of his skull. I drove my fist into his stomach like a sledgehammer. His eyes bulged, mouth went O-shaped, stomach acid sprayed from his lips. His feet left the ground. He flew backward, hit the wall, bounced off, and collapsed face down. 2 dry heaves, then he was out. I walked over and stepped on his face. Ground my shoe down on his nose bridge until it cracked. Blood and broken teeth sprayed across the floor. When I stopped, there were barely any standing. Over 20 men lay scattered across the hallway. Some clutched broken arms and rolled in agony. Some held shattered kneecaps, curled against walls. Some had caved-in chests, coughing up bloody foam. Some lay motionless, unconscious, or worse, I didn't care. Blood pooled everywhere across the uneven concrete. The air reeked of iron, sweat, and urine. Several of them had lost control of their bladders, pants soaked, lying in their own filth, eyes empty, bodies trembling. 4 men still stood at the far end of the hallway. They watched me walk toward them, step by step, and their legs were shaking. The tall, skinny one in front had gone paper-white. His lips quivered. His teeth chattered. He held his knife out toward me, but his whole hand was trembling. I stopped 3 meters away, arms at my sides. My knuckles were covered in blood, some dried to dark brown crusts, some still wet, dripping between my fingers. My knuckles were swollen like little buns. I couldn't feel the pain. The tall, skinny one swallowed hard. His voice was shaking badly.
Who?
Who the fuck are you? I didn't answer. Just stared at him. Whatever he saw in my eyes made his legs give out. He stumbled back into the wall, couldn't go any further. His knife clattered to the floor and rolled to my feet. He crouched down, hugged his head, and started shaking violently. His pants were soaked. The other 3 didn't wait for me to move. They dropped to their knees on the concrete with a heavy thud. Please, ma'am. We were wrong. Please spare us. The one in front was slamming his forehead against the floor so hard it split open, blood smearing everywhere. The guy in the floral shirt was crying and kowtowing right next to him. We'll turn ourselves in. We'll accept punishment. The last one in the black tank top couldn't even form proper words, just mumbling, mercy, 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 while banging his head on the ground faster than all of them. I looked at them. Pathetic. Spare them? When those girls in that room begged these men to stop, did they show mercy? The youngest one was 15 or 16, baby fat still on her cheeks, lying on a moldy mat with a swollen belly and dead eyes. They locked those girls in a place worse than a pig pen and used them as breeding machines. Did any of these animals feel a shred of pity? And now they want mercy? Now they're scared? Too late. My eyes burned red. Adrenaline maxed out. I stepped forward. The bald one kneeling in front. I stomped on his fingers. They cracked under my shoe. He shrieked and tried to pull free.
Couldn't.
I bent down and punched his face. First punch shattered his nose. Second split his lips and knocked out 3 teeth. Third cracked his brow bone and swelled his left eye shut. 3 punches. His face wasn't a face anymore. He fell back, unconscious. The floral shirt guy saw what happened and tried to run. Got one step before my foot hit his lower back. He flew forward and face-planted, teeth snapping on impact. I caught up and stomped on his shin. The bone broke clean, white bone pushed up through the skin. His scream was so high it hurt my ears. The black tank top was too scared to stand. He was on his knees, scooting backward against the wall, crying and begging. I grabbed his hair and yanked him up. He was blubbering, snot and tears everywhere, still saying mercy. I punched him in the face. Then the mouth. Then the temple. His eyes rolled back. Body went limp like wet clay. I let go and he dropped, skull bouncing off the concrete. He twitched twice and went still. 3 people. Under 2 seconds. Then bang. The front door exploded inward. Li Chun was first through, gun raised, followed by Zhang Yu, Jiang Yan, and 7 or 8 armed detectives pouring in behind him. They all froze. Guns up with nothing to aim at. Over 20 men lay across the hallway. Some groaning. Some twitching. Some completely still. The air was thick with blood, sweat, and urine. It stung the eyes. Li Chun's gaze swept across the broken limbs, scattered teeth, and pools of blood. His throat bobbed. Then he looked up and saw me at the far end of the corridor. I was drenched in blood head to toe. My white t-shirt had turned dark red. My face was covered, forehead to chin, with only my eyes showing through the mess. Blood dripped from my jaw into the puddle at my feet. Li Chun shoved his gun into his holster and ran to me. He grabbed my shoulders and looked me over frantically.
Directoran.
Where are you hurt? His voice cracked with panic. I looked down at him, then at myself. It's not mine, he blinked. Not yours. No. There are victims inside. Save them first. I grabbed a dirty rag from near the sink and wiped my face. Are you really okay? He asked again. I told you it's not my blood, I said, tossing the rag aside. The girls inside, get them to a hospital. Every single one. Full escort, medical exams, statements. Nobody gets left behind. Yes, ma'am. Li Chun snapped into action. Zhang Yu, ride with the ambulances. Don't let anyone near those girls. Jiang Yan locked down the perimeter. Not even a fly gets out. Zhao Zheng, full crime scene processing. Turn over every inch. They scattered to their tasks. Li Chun turned back to me. His eyes dropped to my hands. The knuckles were swollen grotesquely, skin stretched shiny and tight. Blood and dirt caked over them. Some spots had torn open, showing raw red flesh underneath. He wanted to say something, but I'd already turned and walked away. My footsteps echoed down the corridor, and I disappeared around the corner. Li Chun looked into that room one last time. 7 or 8 girls pressed against the wall, some sitting, some lying down, all with swollen bellies. Empty eyes.
No expressions.
Some had police jackets draped over them, some were wrapped in blankets, some just shivered in the corner. He turned away. At the hospital, I sat in the emergency room with my right hand spread on the desk. My knuckles were swollen like little buns, the skin stretched tight and shiny, purple bruising running from the joints all the way down to the base of each finger. A few spots had torn open, showing raw red flesh underneath. The doctor was a man in his 50s with reading glasses. He squeezed and rotated my fingers. Does it hurt? No, I said flatly. He pressed harder. Yes, I corrected. That's what I thought. He let go and started writing.
No fractures.
Soft tissue damage. The swelling is from excessive force. I'll prescribe anti-swelling medication, topical and oral. Don't use your hands for 3 days. He handed me a bag with ointment and pills. Use them on schedule. Don't skip. I took the bag, stood up, and walked out before he could finish his sentence about the 3-day rest. The next day, around 11:30, I was sitting in a small restaurant on a quiet commercial street, eating lunch. Black t-shirt, dark pants, a Band-Aid still on my right knuckle. I checked my phone while waiting for my food. Douyin's #1 trending topic. Leping surrogacy case solved. Over 200 million views. The news video showed the gray building, the police tape, and the girls being helped into ambulances with their faces blurred, but their swollen bellies couldn't be hidden. Over 300,000 comments. What kind of animals do this? Locking up girls as surrogacy tools. Those girls are teenagers. I'm shaking. Captain Han no, Deputy Director Han now. She's been here less than 2 weeks. Took down a crime lord. Busted a surrogacy ring. What can't she do? She beat over 20 men by herself and put them all in the hospital. She's not human. The people of Leping are making her a banner. Delivering it to the station tomorrow. My rice bowl arrived. I put the phone down and picked up my chopsticks. I'd barely taken 2 bites when a couple sat down at the next table. A blind date by the looks of it. The woman was in her late 20s, light blue dress, sitting properly with her hands on her knees. The guy wore a polo shirt, hair slicked back with gel, and started bouncing his leg the moment he sat down. He talked loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Told her about his income, his car, his house. Asked about her family, her parents, whether she had brothers. She answered quietly, her voice getting smaller. Then he asked how many boyfriends she'd had. She said 2, hesitantly. He leaned forward and asked how far things went. She said she'd rather not say. He waved it off. We're all adults here. My rule is, dating is fine, but no fooling around. Plenty of girls these days have no self-respect. My chopsticks paused mid-bite. Then he brought up the surrogacy case. His voice got louder, like he'd found a great conversation topic. Those girls were so stupid. Walking around alone at night, getting dragged into vans without even screaming. Isn't that basically asking for it? I set my chopsticks down. And the ones they rescued, bellies that big, the youngest one 15 or 16. Who's going to want them now? What man would take that on? Their lives are basically over. The woman went silent, staring at her water glass. People in the comments are feeling sorry for them, he scoffed. Sorry for what? They weren't careful.
Whose fault is that?
Going out at night dressed up nice. What do you expect? My appetite was gone. My hand pressed against the table edge. Fingers slowly tightening. Under the band-aid on my right hand, the bruise throbbed, but I couldn't feel it anymore. He kept going. If I'm looking for a partner, I'd never pick someone like that. Already been ruined. Just thinking about it is disgusting. Please stop, the woman finally said, voice tight. What? He looked confused. I said stop, the woman repeated, looking up at him with a hard expression. Those girls are victims. How can you talk about them like that? I'm just stating facts, he said, acting innocent. They were ruined. What's wrong with what I said? Why are you so sensitive? Enough. Another voice cut in. 2 young women at the next table, one with a ponytail, one with long hair, had been listening. Are those words even fit for a human being? Ponytail said, anger dripping from every syllable. Those girls were forced by criminals. They didn't choose this. What right do you have to blame victims? Ruined and no one will want them? Are you living in ancient times? Long hair jumped in. A woman's value is being someone's wife. Who the hell do you think you are? The polo shirt guy's face turned bright red. He tried to argue back, but his blind date had already picked up her purse and left without a word. Ponytail smirked. Serves you right. He glared at everyone, grabbed his phone, and stormed out. What a loser, Long hair said, rolling her eyes. I watched him leave. I set down my chopsticks. My rice was only half eaten, but my appetite was completely gone. I tucked a 20 yuan bill under the plate, grabbed my phone, and followed him out. He turned a corner heading south, walking fast, clearly pissed off. I kept about 20 meters behind him. Commander Zhang's words kept playing in my head. Be ruthless with social scum. Treat them like enemy combatants. My mouth twitched slightly. This guy qualified. He walked 2 blocks, checked his phone once, then turned into a narrow alley. I knew this alley. I'd studied the map yesterday. Halfway through there's a bend leading to a small clearing full of junk and broken bicycles.
No cameras o overhead.
None at the entrance either. Perfect spot. He was standing next to a beat-up electric tricycle, scrolling his phone with his back to the alley entrance. Completely unaware. I walked up behind him without a sound. Then I kicked him square in the lower back. He flew forward, phone sailing through the air. His face hit the concrete nose first. Blood immediately. Who the F? He tried to turn over. I stepped on his back and pressed him flat. I crouched down and yanked his head up by the hair. His face was a mess, nose split open, lip busted, 2 front teeth loose. Blood covered his eyes, so he could barely see me.
Who?
Who are you? I didn't answer. I punched him in the mouth. His head snapped back, skull hitting the ground. Blood and broken teeth oozed from his lips. Another punch. Nose bridge. Cracked and shattered. Blood sprayed. Another. Eye socket. Brow bone split. I swelled shut instantly. 3 punches, and he'd stopped screaming. His face was swollen like a pig's head. 3 teeth gone. Blood foam everywhere. He lay there shaking like a dog with a broken spine.
You
wait. He mumbled through sobs and blood. I stood up, straightened my collar, looked down at him one more time. He was curled up, hands over his head, neck tucked in. I laughed through my nose, kicked him one more time for good measure, and walked away. He tried to crawl toward his phone 3 meters away. Couldn't reach it. Just lay there bleeding on the concrete. I stepped out of the alley and took a deep breath. That felt good. The next morning, I was sitting in my new deputy director's office on the 4th floor. Fresh white gauze wrapped around my right hand. I'd done it myself before leaving home. Not pretty, but it covered the wounds. On my desk sat a red banner with gold lettering. Swift as thunder, cases solved at lightning speed, signed by all citizens of Lepping. It had been delivered to the front desk yesterday afternoon. No name left, just a note. For Director Han. The people of Lepping thank you. I stared at it for 3 seconds, then called Lee Chun. Come up and take this banner. Hang it on the wall at the Criminal Investigation Unit. Director Han, that was sent to you personally. Hang it at the Criminal Investigation Unit. I repeated. No room for discussion. Yes, ma'am. He came and took it away. I leaned back, arms crossed, looking out the window. Today was quiet. Lee Chun's team was handling the case follow-up. The girls had all been placed in proper care. Nothing needed my attention.